announcements. Item A, public comment. Do either of you wish to make a public comment? Or does Graham?
He's still connecting. I don't know if we want to give it a minute, just in case, since we were a few minutes late to get the meeting started. Yeah, we can come back to that.
Yeah. So do we want to go ahead and do Chip's items, or do we have to stay?
Sure.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So that is item E.
The solar panels on the DPW.
Oh, yeah,
E.
no.
I think the numbers changed. EG. That's just going to be reposted.
You said E. Oh, okay.
We've been talking to our contact at Power Options for some time now. They had a crew evaluating a salt shed option as well as a ground mounted option. Decided that the ground mounted option was not practical, that DPW needs the yard, but the rooftop option seems suitable. So we have received like a first draft of some financial projections from the Power Options guy. Rick and I talked with him this morning about some errors and adjustments in it, but overall we can fit 40 kilowatts of solar panels on the shed. The estimated cost of the project is I think 137,000 is what we're talking about right now. There's figures for what the revenue or the savings would be from that, but those are some of the things we were talking about adjusting. In the first draft of what he gave us, it seemed like there was going to be a payback around year 8 or so. Internal rate of return 8.7%, etc. There are some errors though with this sheet, as well as the amount of savings or revenue is also a question. They use a certain figure, per kilowatt hour generated about what would be the revenue based on that. Rick and I spoke with them this morning about why the number was relatively low compared to what we thought might be what we would save from a project on per kilowatt hour basis. But in general, these are some preliminary numbers anyways. To really get firmer numbers, we need to start the process of applying to the state for SMART program acceptance and to the utility for a connection. And then so by working through that process, we would firm up the numbers. And so the hope now is that we can continue to work with Power Options to develop this proposal on an initial approval to work towards something that we could propose to the town in the fall.
And so this would be a warrant article for the down payment?
Yeah.
In the fall?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not a down payment.
Not down payment, it's the total cost.
Yeah, for the total cost. Well, yeah, I guess the down payment is shown, it is the total.
Oh, yeah, down payment.
Same.
I'm coming, guys. Yeah. Oh my god, dude, you're killing me on dishes, bro.
Hey, Graham, your mic is on.
Nope, sorry.
We went through some technical questions about the nature of the connection that would be made at the salt shed. They've got to go to 3-phase power. It's currently 1 phase, and so the cost of the project includes things like that, upgrading the connection. But what we want to do is give Power Options guy the go ahead to pursue the application with the utility and the state to enable the subsidies and, you know, whatever the paperwork that is involved in making a project like this happen.
And so did they charge us for that work?
No. No, but they do, you know, they ask for a, you know, this, it's actually a letter of commitment, that, you know, that we would intend to go forward, obviously understanding that, it would ultimately be subject to town meeting approval of funding, you know, that they don't want to put, you know, for good reason, they don't want to put the effort into, you know, to do something that we're not committed to following through with.
Sure. Is an 8-year payback like standard or acceptable? It seems long to me. So we typically go for 5.
When you say, don't we typically go for 5, I'm not sure what you mean.
I mean, I think that's an engineering standard is, you know, 5-year payback is reasonable, but I don't know if solar is different. Is this what we've received on other solar projects we've done in town?
We haven't done any other projects in town. We haven't implemented anything. The Main Street Solar is what's called a PPA, so we don't own anything there. We didn't put, the only money we put in was our, you know, was our basically staff time. And so, 8 years is not unreasonable. Quite honestly, I'm not sure it's gonna be 8 years. It's complicated.
Right, these numbers have to be reworked.
Because they need to rework the numbers.
Okay.
But it could be 8 years. 8 years is what I gave a brief talk. We were talking about doing streetlights a year or so ago or something, and I think the payback on that project was gonna be 7 or 8 years, and you know, the consensus then was that wasn't bad for this project.
Yeah, and, you know, and I mean, there's also, the added benefit if we do this is that it would be furthering our goal, assuming we have a goal, to try to achieve decarbonization by 2050.
So would this feed into the entire town grid or just? It would serve to DPW, excess power would be net metered to the utility, and then, you know, that the utility would, depending upon whether or not there's net metering capacity left here, it would either be, what's referred to as savings on bill, or it would be net metered. And then if it's net metered and we get net metering credits, then that's better. You know, we would allocate.
The savings are greater if it's net metered compared to if it's on bill credit.
Essentially, you know, cost deferred or cost avoided. And then, the net metered credits would be allocated to other electric accounts that we have.
Okay. First, any questions?
Yeah, my first question was, does it tie into just this building? And you just asked that, but is there significant credits, or is the bulk of it gonna be to cover the cost of electric for just this one building?
No, actually, so for perspective, the little system that is currently at DPW covers about 1/3 of, historically, has covered about 1/3 of the electrical energy used by that. And I think that's 2.36 kilowatts, the size of that system. So this system is
2.36, you said?
yeah, I think it's 2.36, if I remember right. And so this system, you know, it's funny, I have 2 or 3 different small systems I keep in my mind or that I'm familiar with. And I can't remember which is, I think this one is the one that's 2.36.
The majority of the revenue or the savings
Yeah.
is from the net metering. The building itself is small user of electricity.
Yeah, so probably.
So that's the
10%
objective,
of
is
the
net metering, it's not to cover the cost of the electric in the building, that's what I'm getting.
Well, it
Yes.
would cover the balance of the cost.
It'll
of the
eliminate
electric
it, but if it's-
Yeah, but then probably 90% of the gain would be net metering credits, which would be applied to one of our other electric bills.
Okay, so this is just a good location to put the installation.
Yeah,
It's not satisfying that building's problem.
correct,
Okay.
yeah, well, it is,
More
it
than
is,
that.
it is satisfying.
But if it was just that, that's an
Yeah,
exorbitant number just for
Right.
electric for that building. is what I'm
correct,
getting.
yeah,
So it's a significant gain elsewhere.
yeah.
I see there was a number in there somewhere. I just started reading online about maintenance on these solar panels, I guess?
That's a borough about, you know, operation and maintenance and costs.
Yeah, I thought you had that. I was just curious. I didn't know you had to go up and clean them and everything.
You don't,
I'm just reading the story they're coming out.
well,
The ones you don't, because it degrades your, production if they're not clean.
I've never heard of anybody, you know, there's some environments where you would do that, but we're not in with those environments, you know, rain cleans them off pretty well. You're talking about something I've never seen done in the Northeast, let me put it that way.
I don't remember him saying what the operation and maintenance cost or activity was, and I don't actually really know what that is.
I know there are desert installations where that's a big deal, but that's not us. You know, where dust accumulation is a big deal. You know, do get pollen buildup, but that rinses off.
I know I've got windows in my house that have degraded just from the acid rain hitting them over the years, so. Okay.
Any other questions? Alright. Want a motion?
Sure, I make a motion that we, was it, they were looking for a letter of intent, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that we would, agree to sign a letter of intent to move forward with this project, you know, assuming that, that the numbers in the revision to this document we have here are reasonable, and that town meeting, you know, the town meeting supports it, when we get to that point.
Second.
Further discussion? No?
Just in discussion, I would just, this came up last Thursday at CIC. Who's the second? Okay. That if it was brought forward for the fall, it would be a capital project, so it would have to go through that process.
Yeah.
And there's language in the bylaw, which we talked last week about, ideally we can change, but it is in there right now, that capital project for a special town meeting has to be 4 months prior. That's not always been followed. In fact, you know, it's often not been followed, but you know, so hopefully, but I think, you know, CIC meets in January, you could brief them that, or in not January, June. You could brief them, let them know it's coming, and just keep them apprised. I don't think it's gonna be an issue, because it's realistically, it's like any other fall warrant article, probably we won't really have all the details till more like closer to Labor Day.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make everyone aware it would need to go through the capital process, so.
Quick question, just what's the nature of the federal tax credit or rebate? Do they actually cut a check to someone?
Yeah, so they're, based on the, Inflation Reduction Act, there is now a direct pay option for what is historically, that's.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
Applicable for nonprofits and municipalities, and other.
Because that always got in the way prior to that.
Right, yeah, because we had no tax liability in the past, so we couldn't use a federal tax credit, but now there's a direct pay option of the,
Thank you.
yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
That was a good question, Ron, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Interested in?
Well, there was, I think the following item, do you want to talk about the decarbonization?
Sure.
Anyone here?
Yeah, Angus just passed this out, so I don't know if other people, I know there was an email that was forwarded earlier, I just got this information this afternoon, so we don't have to take it up today if you choose not to, but seeing as we're here, then.
Okay. So you wanna give us the rundown on that?
I've been talking also to Power Options in terms of a contractor involved with this, help towns develop a decarbonization plan for looking at the building systems, defining what the likely end of life is, and developing a plan to tighten up the building, improve efficiency, and then, build in a kind of a long-term roadmap for equipment replacement that would, by planning ahead, make it easier for us to make beneficial choices on future heating equipment that is, have a plan to hopefully use, heat pumps or similar types of technology as opposed to throwing in another gas powered heater or whatever when, because we haven't planned ahead.
It might also include recommendations for improving the building envelope. You know, because the first thing you want to do besides, before you size your new energy consuming equipment is make your building so that it requires as little energy as possible.
Mhm. Okay. So,
There's a
um,
model, we've seen a copy of a decarbonization plan for the city or town of Melrose, and, you know. It's, I feel pretty assuring, it's just looking at the buildings, looking at the heating systems, or any other, you know, energy using equipment, and then making a plan, a well thought out plan ahead of time about how you want to replace that.
and so the action item is how many or which buildings you want to include?
Well, I mean, that's subject to discussion right now. So we talked previously about this building, the annex, and the senior housing, the housing authority property. So a week and a half ago, I was on the agenda, you know, the slot on the agenda for the housing authority and talked to them about it. And had sent them some background information beforehand. After, you know, a fair amount of discussion, they voted to approve to participate in this decarbonization planning. You know, understanding that they need to pay their share of it, and it's part of what we have to figure out is how do we want to assume their share of it. And then the other two buildings would be the two other significant energy using structures in town, or the public safety complex and the library.
Mhm. What about Old Town Hall, is that not?
I don't think it makes sense to look at that right now. That building, in order to make that a reasonable building from an energy efficiency standpoint, is gonna require, a lot of money. And I don't think at this point in time, it makes sense for us to look at that.
But time out on that, you got a price for 1 to 3 and a price for 4 to 6, so it costs you no more to have it evaluated.
Okay, I don't think they're at that yet, but that is an interesting point, Chris, I hadn't thought about that.
And once you hit the threshold of 4, you might as well do 6.
But actually, we're not at that structure yet. If you look at what's highlighted, the current structure, I asked for their costs or their pricing at 2 buildings, 3 buildings, 4 buildings, and 5 buildings. And then I asked them, why is there this discrepancy? Why is there a huge jump from 3 to 4? And that was where they came back and said, well, this is what we're evolving to. We're currently in a ramp up period of dialing down the discounts for when we're funding ends. Ramping up linearly to full price.
On the first page, he says 1 to 3 buildings cost $5,000 for roadmap, 4 to 6 buildings cost $9,000 for the roadmap.
That's their projected full price schedule. It's not what they're using yet. So I know you haven't had this for long, so you didn't get a chance to read the thread. So
You better read it now, I still don't understand.
okay, so my question was, so originally I was given this 2, 3, 4, and 5 building schedule. And I said, okay, well, thanks, that's great. But why is there a huge jump from 3 to 4 as compared to, it's basically a 5 times increment jump from 3 to 4 as opposed to 2 to 3 or 4 to 5. And then the reply was, well, because we're trending towards this projected full price schedule, in which there will be 1 to 3 buildings and 4 to 6 buildings. Now, an interesting question.
The 6th building would be about $300 more, right? The way the schedule is
That's how
going.
it goes from 4 to 5. It's 300 more, and we won't have the price for the 6th. Yeah.
So again, if you're considering the old town hall.
Well, no, 4 to 6 buildings by the new schedule, when they're no longer subsidized at all, will be $9K for 6 buildings. So that's a jump from currently at 5 buildings, it's at $46.67. So that means the 6th building, if we wait until they are on that new schedule, is gonna cost us $4,333 for a single additional building.
So, and where's this money gonna come from?
We have to figure that out.
So it's not allocated.
No, we don't, no, we've budgeted nothing for this yet, so.
Yeah, it's the kind of, depending on the direction the board goes, I think, we're obviously getting close to the end of the fiscal year, so it may be that there's that amount of money in a relevant, expense line like town building improvements. If it looks like all of any logical expense line doesn't have that kind of money, the options would be to either, seek a line item transfer, seek a reserve fund transfer, or pay it out of FY 25, but that would, since we didn't budget that for FY 25, it would, I'd rather find it in the current year if there's money. And I think in the scheme of things, there would be.
Yeah.
I just don't know sitting here today what line it would be in, and if that might need a line item transfer.
So you're looking to us to decide tonight on how many buildings?
Yeah, ideally we would decide on the number of buildings.
So what are you proposing, 5?
I think that 5 would be the way to do it, the buildings that were mentioned.
Yeah.
And then
Didn't the library already have an energy efficiency plan done? I remember reading that when I was on the board of trustees.
there was some work done a decade ago. Or maybe even more than a decade ago. But it was.
And things are way different than that.
Yeah, and quite honestly, so there's a series of heat pumps that were installed 8 or 9 years ago. They are not to today's standard.
Huge, yeah.
Yeah, but they're just not to today's standard, and I think that current equipment, the proposal, there's not a proposal to replace them in the near term, but, I think at some point we'll want to upgrade them to sort of current day technology, and it'll be a lot more efficient.
So what's the total cost gonna be for 5 buildings?
So again, going to the highlighted thing, the 4667.
Could I ask one thing? So if you wanted to go back to them right now and say, give me a price for 6, is it possible that that price for 6 right now today, not the new schedule, but right now today, might allow you to feel like doing the town hall? It might be good if it doesn't cost a lot, it might be good information. That's all I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying, if you look at the incremental change from the buildings between.
Yeah.
two and five,
I don't think we're gonna get the level of detail that is gonna give us value for that building. I mean, I've looked at that building. I spent an hour in there one day with Wayne Amaral. And we went through, because I talked to him about it, what would it take to do this? So we went through. That building is going to be a very significant project to make it energy efficient.
Understood.
And to justify, you need to first make the envelope energy efficient before you upgrade the energy using components.
Right.
And that's going to be a study that's going to be more than $1,000 study. Just to do that, my guess is it's going to be $50,000 just to figure out what you have to do to that building. The engineering work is going to be significant. Yeah, I say 50, that's a number out of the air, but it will not be a trivial number, just to do that. And this is not going to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just how are we getting to 5? We got town office, senior housing, public safety, library.
And annex.
Oh, the annex is a different building.
Right,
Okay,
right.
all right, okay.
Yeah.
The original 3, and now the public safety and the library.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't thinking of the annex. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I mean, there are other buildings that the town has, but at some point, we can deal with that stuff.
Right.
They're small energy users, and we have time to do that, and they won't be huge projects.
I was just, so thank you. You answered my question. Yeah.
So we would just allocate that cost, basically 1/5 of it to the housing authority.
I think that makes sense, and then that, I told them that I expected to be, no more than $1,000, so that actually, and that was a moderately educated guess, but I'm happy that it's good, if that's the way we do it, it works out to be true.
All right, so do you want to make a motion, Chris? Do you have any more questions?
Don't let Rick make one.
All right.
Okay, well, I've moved that we would, make the commitment to, Power Options to have them do the, develop a decarbonization roadmap for, the 5 buildings that we've discussed, which would be, the, town office building, the town annex, the, housing authority, senior housing complex, which the housing authority will reimburse the town for, the public safety complex, and the GAR library.
All right, second, any further discussion?
I would just note, I don't see a need to change the motion to say subject to appropriation. I just want to be
Okay.
clear that I wouldn't, ideally, we're not gonna actually sign a letter until we know exactly where the funds are coming from.
Sounds good.
And where we're reasonably close to the end of the fiscal year. I mean, we could, there's money today in the town building improvements line.
Right.
By June 30th, there's not. So I could sign a contract tomorrow and then run over budget by $4,000 and be the thing
Yeah.
in July for one. So as long as everyone's clear on that,
We still got opera as a backup.
I'm sorry.
Opera.
Yeah, right. There's always.
It's a small amount.
It's a small amount, so I don't see the need to change the,
Yeah.
motion, I just wanna make sure that, we'll find, we'll know where the money's coming from before we sign the contract, so.
All right,
Okay,
all in favor? Aye.
all right,
Cool.
thanks.
All right.
Thanks for moving that.
You're welcome.
Questions up?
Good night.
Thanks a lot. Jay. See you later.
Item B, town manager updates.
So we do have Graham, I don't know if he's here for a specific thing or if he's just, listening.
Graham, speak now.
I was just checking in on the 61A. I don't know if you guys got to that yet, but I missed that.
No, you have not missed that.
All right, that was my only that was interested in the page school thing, and that was it. Nothing crazy.
You want me to just summarize on that?
Sure.
So, we did receive, by email, late Monday, expression of intent to convert a portion of land, roughly an acre, from 61A. We did not receive it in hard copy until today. So the clock doesn't start, once we sent it to town council, once we got it by email, they have, under our local procedure, they have 2 days to basically do what amounts to a completeness review. We haven't gotten the results of that. We do, and the clock really doesn't start till we get a hard copy, which we got today. So we confirmed with Sharon, once we got it, we scanned it in, resent it to her, let her know we got a hard copy. So I do expect to hear from her no later than Monday as to whether it's complete, in which case that starts the clock. I did go ahead and send it to the town entities named in the procedure. And once we have a response from legal as to whether that clock in fact started or whether it didn't, if there's some deficiency, for instance, once I have that information, we'll notify the town entities, and then we'll just follow the procedure. And so you as chair would set a time for a future meeting. Once I have that, I notify the town entities, and they would have till that time to either provide any input or to provide that they're not going to provide it.
Okay.
So we'll follow the procedure. And that's really all my only intent in putting it on the agenda was just since we did receive it, I thought it made sense to just acknowledge we received it. But the process is, very, very early. Obviously, as you know from prior experience with this, if the town were to have an intent to exercise a right of first refusal, the timelines for that are extremely short, and things would need to move very, very quickly in terms of appraisals and so forth.
Okay.
But I don't want to get ahead of council, but
Yeah.
I'd say until we know that it's complete, we don't know it's complete.
But I think probably, I'm guessing that part of Graham's interest here was in, likely time frame, and So presuming that it's complete and that it goes out to the other, that, you know, that the process is followed. I know we've gone through this multiple times before, and I don't recall, you know, rough timeframe, in terms of how long it's likely to take.
It moves very quickly. The first 30 days are very significant, so. Yeah, if the notice of intent is, let's see, so.
We don't have anything in the packet, correct? This was sent via the email?
This just sent around by email.
Yeah.
So select board will set an agenda item at the next available meeting that will allow the town entities, in the opinion of the chair, a reasonable opportunity to prepare recommendations. Town entities and the butters will be notified of time and date of the meeting. Town entities not providing feedback or providing notice of their intent to provide feedback within 7 days of being notified, or at the board's meeting will be assumed as not wishing to offer a recommendation. Town entities that provide notice to the board of their intent to provide feedback shall be afforded a reasonable amount of time in the opinion of the chair to consider the request, but in no instance shall the deadline to provide feedback be longer than 28 days from the initial date of notice.
Okay.
So.
And the initial data notice is when you receive the hard copy, or when the.
Potentially today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the earliest the clock would start is today.
Okay, so Graham, I'm guessing that, you know, your interest here is in, the time frame. So it sounds like, assuming that the town council finds that that the notification is complete, that it would be 28 days from today, is or less.
Or less, yeah,
Right,
yeah, I mean,
right.
because the town, the board would have to make a decision, and initiate, hire an appraiser. I mean, it could be less.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
and I will say, just with regard to so Graham obviously is chair of Open Space Committee, he's recused himself in that capacity. He's here tonight, I believe, just as a resident.
Right.
And Patricia Reeser has agreed to be the open space kind of point person on this, so.
Okay.
Going forward, when I get new information for the open space committee, I'll send it to Patricia.
Okay.
Is it likely that you'll be adding this item to the agenda next week anyways, so that just
For
because
the meeting on May 23rd?
whenever your next meeting is, I apologize, I don't know when it is.
It's 2 weeks from tonight.
Oh, 2 weeks, okay, I'm sorry, but you'd expect to be taking this up then anyways, it's another benchmark for Graham.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's not necessarily the date that the board would set.
Yeah, no, I
So
understand.
that- Yeah,
But by then you'll have more in hand and more in packet to.
Yeah, well, but also, you know, we need feedback from.
Yeah.
Within the required timeframe, 7 days, I guess, so we need feedback from the other entities.
Right.
Before we can.
Yeah, so my point is, stuff is gonna have to go out pretty quick,
Yeah,
and that gives everybody an opportunity to get up to date, that's all.
Is there a map of the property that we can?
not that I have on this computer. I can bring it up and kind of rough out that the map that was sent around with the email is pretty crude.
Yeah.
Because it's a subset of the overall parcel. And there's like a red box that shows up. The overall parcel is here, but it's not anywhere near that. It's basically a little square right around.
yeah,
here.
it's just the
It's like a
southwest.
1 acre block, and it's like literally a red box. It's not like a meets and bounds description. It's not. So I do have questions as to whether, anyway, we'll see.
Does the town own adjacent properties, so why would we?
No,
No, we still have to go through the process.
Oh, I know, I just didn't know what the level of interest would be.
Yeah.
The other curiosity, and I haven't done a 61A and been involved with one in years, but it used to be based on a valid purchase and sales agreement, so I read your attachment in the link. They can provide you with an appraisal, the town can contest that, if they're not satisfied, then you gotta do your own appraisal.
Yeah.
So that would slow the process down if the town had an interest.
If the town has an interest, we basically have to drop everything and put an enormous amount of time toward this. And that's for any 61A, not just this one. The way this stuff is written is, and you'd have to, if you wanted to actually close on a sale within the required time frame, you'd have to have a special town meeting by the end of the summer. I mean, you'd have to basically like put it in.
And I wanna get familiar with the process, not because of this one, but because of another parcel I can see potential on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I think we have to strategize and plan on at some point.
Yeah, I will say that this procedure, when I started 6 years ago, I think was very good. It's even better. We amended it in 2021. It's very, very good. It's very carefully written. If everyone reads the procedure, this is exactly what we are going to do.
Okay.
So you wrote it.
Well, no, it was very good when I started. We added some nuances such as, I think in the old one, it might have said that the entities had 30 days to respond, and we're like, that doesn't give the board enough time. So that's where like the 7 days and the chair's discretion, like it intentionally gives the chair the ability
No,
to manage the process, so,
What I
yeah.
meant to say is, it's typical that a lot of stuff actually could undergo the same process. It's good to get around.
Yeah, yeah, and
There's
this
so
is,
much of that stuff that could be nuanced.
yeah, it really is, and it's a great roadmap for staff involved as well, because we follow the procedure, so, and where time is of the essence on these, it's just, really important that that's why when I got it by email, even though I knew it wasn't a bona fide submittal, I sent it around just because those extra couple of days can make a difference,
Yeah.
so.
Especially if the board only meets once a month. Right,
Right.
okay. So should we go back up to item A?
Sure. So, I mean, I did put together slides and what I'll do is I'll run through them quickly and then I'll plan to send this around by, email to the board to give you really the time to digest it. So my intent in doing this is really for, with town meeting behind us and obviously a lot that was approved and I just want to make sure we're intentional before we jump into new things that we kind of level set in terms of where we are with the existing initiatives. So this is, I've got a review of active projects with some key steps and milestones as available. I only started working on this afternoon, so it's, but I drew from that matrix you've seen before, so I just put it in a different format. And then, so I have 4 slides with active projects, then another 4 slides with projects that we previously penciled in for FY 25 plus, not necessarily FY 25, but just future. And then we'll have some new projects, which really most of those are extensions of things that were already on the list. They're just at a different stage. And then sometime not tonight, we'll get it to prioritize. That'll be at a future meeting. So there's a lot of text and so I don't want to belabor all that, but I've organized things in the 4 groupings that make sense to me, in which we kind of organize staff around finance administration, planning and land management, public services and infrastructure. And I use kind of color coding. So everything you see on this list, should be familiar to you because it goes back to different goal setting sessions we've had last July and I think in September. So I'll email this around, you can go through it, but this is just intended to be a snapshot of the project, where it was deemed in that grid as either vital, important, or optional, and kind of just the briefest of snippets on the current status, any key next steps and milestones. And then really one of the most important columns is this continued in FY 25? So, water financial plan with realistic sustainable water capital program plan. There's been progress, work is ongoing, definitely a continuing thing. That's not something that's going to fall off the list after June 30th. So I won't go through each one. Let me just maybe highlight some. The union contracts, that's obviously going to be a big focus and a big investment of time over the next several months. As opposed to like Harbor Master, that's like we're at the 99-yard line tonight. So that's one I'd say is that's not going to be an FY 25.
I heard you're asking Harbor Master when it says collective.
Right.
Oh, that's a cop function. I mean, put this together.
It's not a sweat.
you know, MOU with Newburyport and Water. So some of these are very present that the board's actively engaged in, you know, week in, week out. Others are more things that are on my work plan, like a remote work policy, some of the other financial policies on employee reimbursements, procurement, so forth, that are just, you know, we just haven't had the time to get over the finish line. So let's see, if it's crossed out, it means it's complete. Pentucket Regional Agreement, this is one as we look to prioritize for next year, like, do we want to make a big investment in that? Do we want to, you know? So that was kind of when that fell off the table in the winter, it was kind of tabled, and we'll look back at that. Whittier Regional Agreement, we'll talk more about that later tonight, but I think the question is going to be how deep do we want to go in that in terms of how much time do we want to put in? Dogs leashing, I put TBD because I don't know what the board's posture is going to be in terms of whether you want to put that back on for a kind of an immediate work plan, or if you want to not do that. The investment manager procurement process, as you know, that's got a couple of years of history. And in the last couple of weeks, there's been work on it. It is subject to procurement, yet another legal opinion. It's going to take dozens of hours of time. It's not something I found time for. I know that's not. There's some people who are really unhappy about that, but as I look at my list, it's just very hard to, even if I wanted to, I just, so, let's see. So then into planning and land management, I definitely think at this point, I think we've fully integrated the land agent. You know, she's fully empowered, and that's been great. MBTA communities, obviously huge effort was made, but that's going to continue in FY25. Hazard mitigation plan, our final comments are due tomorrow, so that's very close to being done, but it will continue in the next year because it's still got to be approved by FEMA, and that's going to take into the mid-fall. So even though our work is very close to done, you know, it's not done until it's done. Housing production plan, you know, that's in process. That's going to continue. Ash Street management plan, you know, we thought we were done. We put in a lot of effort. We submitted it. We offered much more than they could have expected, and they came back asking for more. So we really, frankly, haven't gone back to that, but that's still hanging out there. Evergreen, not a whole lot left, but we got from Greenbelt today the draft management agreement, so that'll be on for your next meeting. I haven't looked at that yet. The solar feasibility study, the feasibility study's done, but of course the next steps are to advance specific projects like you just did a few minutes ago. River Road engineering study, really the next steps. Obviously, we're very focused on the June 30th and the MVP grant and all that's ahead of us there. But after that, it's going to be what's the scope of work and what's our plan for June, you know, July 1st forward. There's a lot of different options on that. Climate Change Resiliency Committee is a great group. I think really good meeting. It was just yesterday. But that's going to be a huge focus. And Sawmill Brook land acquisition, as you know, that's something that's going to consume a fair amount of time between now and June 30th, and probably at least a few weeks beyond that. This mowing, I'll skip over that. The next couple. Oh, the Mass Department of Fish and Wildlife, we resolved 2 of the 3 lots. Those have actually been recorded. Those are 100% resolved. The third one is quite complicated, so that is going to be agended for a future meeting to give you a full briefing on that one. And while, you know, we all might look at each other and say this has been hanging out there for 50 years, do we really need to drop everything? It is something we've been under consistent pressure from the state since they sent it to us in October. It is a decades old issue, but it's already taken a fair amount of staff time. It's going to take a lot more to get that third lot resolved. Stormwater bylaw regs and update related bylaws and regs to reflect the latest requirements and for internal consistency. We do have, fortunately, Whitten under contract. We had a meeting with them yesterday. We're still actively working on that with our stormwater working group. And that's really, really important. It would be easy for that to get lost in the shuffle with all you guys are doing. It's really important at a staff level. We're continuing to really put significant time toward that because There are some ambiguities in the bylaw, specifically on things to do with segmentation and what's the look back period, and whether it's a project, if it's 3 A&R lots that are in 3 different ownership and not a common scheme of development. Those are things at a staff level, we really need to get those cleared up before next spring construction season so that we can implement this in a reasonable way. So we kind of pushed it off a bit with town meeting, and we told Horsley Witten that right after town meeting, we'd kind of re-engage and look to a fall town meeting. So we did have our initial meeting with them yesterday. And that is something we're very much hoping at a staff level to have something for the fall town meeting, for the stormwater bylaw. And there are some other, subdivision regs, other things that would really benefit from, making sure they're all internally consistent. Proposed new wetlands bylaw, obviously it didn't pass the town meeting, so, what the next steps, that's gonna be up to the town leadership. Hunting on town land, I obviously there was a commitment to make either a working group or a committee, so that's gonna be something that we'll need to move forward on sooner.
Somebody mentioned that there was a group established or something, I don't know if it was ad hoc or whatever, there's some comment about that in one of the meetings.
I think years ago, I do think Rebecca found some files. She's got.
I meant recently, it seemed
Oh,
like.
So the conservation agent and the open space committee volunteered to draft, policy for us.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, that was at a select board meeting,
Oh,
yeah.
With who else involved?
They offered to draft one for us to review. What we need is like a set of criteria to evaluate requests when they come in.
So it's not to change the bylaw, this is to evaluate the current.
Yeah, which is the problem with the current bylaw. It doesn't give us any detail on how to respond to requests.
Okay, but I thought going forward, we're gonna be looking at how to modify that so you didn't have to address each issue.
Yeah.
Change.
Yeah, I mean, so they said they had several people on the open space committee that had experience with it. Like at other,
Okay,
yeah,
just wait and see what comes forward.
yeah, but I mean, I think it will need reminding of those people that they said they were gonna do it,
okay.
yeah.
Then, in the category of public services, our library 5-year strategic plan, I do think we ought to be checking in with the library board on a semi-regular basis, just to make sure we're in alignment there.
Mhm.
Park and rec capital planning, I do think we made some progress this year, but I definitely think that's gonna benefit from a deeper dive in FY 25 now that the DPW restructure is fully implemented. I just need to wind up Ryan and point him in the right direction, but we're definitely on the right track there. But especially as we're talking about things like pickleball feasibility and expanding, because, we definitely need more of like a big picture, action code, we need Park and Rec to be more engaged in the capital planning process. We got the revolving fund done for COA, municipal energy aggregation, that seems to be going along pretty well. We do have to dig in at some point to this regional IMA on the health. This is something the board as a whole probably doesn't, I think it was on your agenda back in December and it was tabled. And I've continued to put in time on it, and Wendy kept her apprised. It's very complicated, and it's something that's kind of hanging out there that we need to at some point jump back in on. I've had I've made real efforts to get information from other towns. Anyhow, long story short, no one's signed the item. Not a single town has.
I don't recall, maybe, when the time allows, we can
Yeah,
talk about that.
Yeah.
I don't recall that discussion at all, but
long story
I
short.
don't know what it refers to.
Okay, so Amesbury got a grant to do like a regional public health excellence grant. They got like $160,000. And I've never seen the grant application. I'd really like to see it, and what representations were made, but it was kind of, to create like a regional, it's not a regional board of health. It's some kind of a working group that our health staff have been fully engaged in it, gone in regular meetings. A lot of towns' health staff have been going to these meetings for 1.5 years. it was all kind of predicated on this intermunicipal agreement that both the select boards and the Board of Health would need to sign. This was sent to me in the late fall with a request that the board sign it. I put it on an agenda. The board had a bunch of questions. I had a bunch of questions. We decided we'd table it. I've since done quite a lot more research. At that point, I hadn't spent much time on it. I was just trying to pass through because Health was telling me, hey, we need the board to sign. The more I've read it, the more questions I've had. There's a lot of stuff about it. You know, it's 25-year agreement. Once you enter it, you can't exit it without both select board and Board of Health agreement. It's, you know, as we're talking about regional agreements, it's the kind of thing where we don't want to have one where we sign it and 20 years from now, people are like,
Cursing us
did I
out.
read this? So I'm not saying it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But it definitely is a weighty thing. It's not just a like, oh, just sign the dotted line. And there is stuff about incurring costs and who bears obligations and things break down. It is, I believe these funds are being used by Amesbury to staff a position to facilitate this regional thing. So what happens when the grant funding comes out, you know?
You can't start till you see there is no grant request. I mean, it's
Right.
a fool's game if you
Right.
don't.
Right.
It's,
right.
I would be very curious because I'm just surprised that the state would give that kind of money based on a regional approach, when in fact, because what happened, I started asking
But
about.
nobody else in the region knew there was being signed on.
So I sent a note back in January to, not to the whole region, but to some of my colleagues in probably 6 or 7 nearby towns. I think Groveland was in a similar posture. She brought it to her board. They had questions. It was kind of in limbo. And I can think of at least 3, if not 4, where my email to my counterpart was the first time they'd heard of it. And there was a letter of intent signed by all the communities in like May or June of 2022, way back. And there were multiple town administrators that were hearing about this for the first time from me. And that was like, and so there's been a lot of, yeah, there's a lot of questions, but it's been sitting on my desk for 6 months. It's something, you know, I'm asked about from time to time, and hey, where are we on this? We haven't had 5 minutes to spend on it. I've spent enough time with Wendy so that and if at any point she wanted to put it on the agenda, she could have, but we both agreed, like, it's not timely. We've been busy, but it's something that we can't have another 3 or 4 months go by. Like, and I can just share everything, but what you're gonna see is like a lot more questions than answers. And I think, you know, it would be very, oh, I know what I was told. That Rick had been at the Board of Health meeting and that Rick fully understood it and it was all set. That's what I was told.
Okay, you do a presentation.
That's exactly what because I think it was December.
Yeah.
It was a December meeting. I put it in front of you and you're the board's liaison and you did go to the subsequent health meeting.
Yeah.
And afterwards I followed up with the health agent to say, hey, we have some questions. He said, oh, Rick was at our meeting. Rick understood it. It's all set. So I can.
Apparently it didn't sink in all that. deep.
I forgive you. You've been busy.
I'm sorry, does Amesbury have any obligation to be reaching out and presenting?
They are through the health departments.
Well,
That's
I mean,
the weird thing. There seems to be, it's weird.
But-
I think it's.
yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
would expect perhaps that they would also present to the select board if they have a staff person
Mhm.
trying to accomplish this. I
Yeah.
understand what you just said, so
Yeah.
I think by going to the Board of Health, but, you know, local government's more complicated than that. I mean, you know.
Right.
Need sign off on, it's puzzling.
Yeah, it's got indemnification language. It's got a lot of stuff that like, you know, like if, let's say they've hired someone and let's say that person's, you know, has some wrongful termination lawsuit and they're suing this regional entity, what share of the liability rests with West Newbury? Let's say someone loses their job and files unemployment. Are we responsible for a share of unemployment? There's 100 questions. And I only got so far as basically writing down all my questions. And then I kind of got wrapped up in budget and articles and everything else, and so I have like pages of notes, but they're literally handwritten notes, like I haven't even had time to type anything up. It's just, but it's been kind of looming over me for, I think it was probably November, and it wasn't even emailed to me, it was dropped off. And I got back to the office, Rebecca's like, oh, I'm like, anyway, it's on the list. It's on the list. So where it rests on the list is something we'll need to grapple with.
One last question, if I might.
Yeah.
So besides the region, our region,
Yeah.
which someone precipitated this, that is a good idea. Are we aware of any place else where this regional health excellence has led to something that the towns say, oh, this has been very beneficial?
I don't know. I can tell you that there's a bunch of material from the roughly May, June 2022 about the grant. This and the state, information from the state, where the state was really like making a big deal. This is a big grant. They were really, looks like advocating for regions to look at this. But in terms of, and I think at that time, it seemed like it was like a new program.
Right.
So whether there's anything actually executed.
My fear is this is a great idea. Ainsley bought into it. Do we really need it presented to us? I mean, it's not clear that there's really anything in this for us.
Well, and that's some of the questions I had is I do think there's some appeal to potential looking at some health services potentially on a regional basis, but this isn't that. This is in addition. This isn't, really advancing the ball in any way on some other things that could be talked about. So,
wow.
Public access to Merrimack River, that's continued to be an ongoing thing, and as you know from the legal bills, there continues to be tax title and so forth that is proceeding every single month. Slow process, but that's continues to be an objective. And then the pickleball, we've got the temporary space that's going well, and next steps are to get the study on track. And we do also want to solicit public engagement before we get there, just start put some things out on social media just to get some interest on potential site selections. So. Infrastructure, road paving, we got that procurement, everything's under contract. The paving is going to be this summer. This might be a good thing for either the next meeting to invite Butch in to present what roads are going to be paved, because I think you were told that a long time ago, but you probably don't remember, and it'd be good to just you could get you current with that. The Page Masonry, you know about that. The water sites, we completed, as far as I'm concerned, we completed the peer review, so it's really now fully into the other water sites. Page conditions assessment. Next step is to aggregate staff and working group reviews, get those all to the consultant in a single package. They'll prepare an updated draft, which will then be a broader circulation draft as a basis for public meetings. We did paint the town hall this fiscal year, believe it or not. It seems like it's 3 years ago. That was something we got done this year. Phone systems, we're ongoing with the procurement. Middle Street Bridge, even though between us and New Bridgeport, we pulled in, $2.5 million, we are going to continue to look for non-local money in FY25. MOU with New Bridgeport, continued negotiations. Coffin Street land acquisition, I've been in touch with the Portland Street neighbors in the last 4 weeks, and I was in touch with Dave Bremer just in the last week and a half on that. So that's very much continues to be on the work plan. The next step is Greenbelt is going to get wetlands permitting for the paths, and we want to align the construction of the parking and the path within Portland right away with the timing of whenever it's really going to be open.
I'm not sure I like his name suggestion of the Cortland Lane.
I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all.
What do you think? I think it should reflect the broader piece, not just the terms of the trail.
I totally agree. Yeah, I didn't
We might wanna tell them that before we get too far along.
Good. Yeah, all right.
Well, it's the first I've heard that name, so.
Yeah,
Do you have suggestions for other names? Besides the Wendy Reed open space? Well, I guess we want that.
I will think about it.
Okay.
Artichoke River Woods, that one we crossed off, that parking and access, that all got done, that took a fair amount. Not at the staff level, but Greenbelt had to go through some hoops to get that permitted. Continued with the infrastructure, Page Pipe Safe Crossing, under contract ongoing. In touch with DOT regularly. The Route 113 corridor plan, there's a lot going on there. We do anticipate a public meeting in the month of June, date TBD. This one I gotta really check in with Wire on exactly where we are moving that telecom equipment off that building, because that's been hanging out for a couple of years. ADA facilities, you've probably noticed there's been a lot of incremental stuff, and in addition, tonight you'll be asked to authorize a grant to support installation of push button doors. Park and Rec O&M plans, didn't really get that done this year, but I think we're on the right track. Coffin Street culvert replacements, we now have the funding, so we're going to need to go forward with procurement to get that under contract, and then there's going to be a probably fairly lengthy permitting process. So if we're going to get those culverts actually replaced a year from now, this is when, you know, we gotta keep pushing it. Page School HVAC is very nearly complete. So that will be done by the end of the fiscal year. These hearing room improvements complete. And any discussion of stormwater culvert mapping and engineering beyond River Road. We made some incremental progress with getting staff trained on the mobile GIS app, but I can't really say there's any plan to really do that. That's a long-term objective. So that's all already. Everything going forward is what's already on the going forward list. So, cable license renewals for both Verizon and Comcast, consideration of regionalization, form of government, potential town charter, town study committee. So financial policies, there's this Mass General Law and self-evaluation of pay practices that's when there's an unfunded mandate that took effect a number of years ago. We still haven't done it. We started, but you guys are still technically the Board of Selectmen, so it's been on my list for a couple of years. At some point, special legislation to formally change that. Not a front burner issue, but it's on the list. Stabilization funds, we made progress with that, creating the new one. The next step is how much money to put into it. Multi-year budget forecasting tool. We made some progress with the Cleargov contract, but we weren't able to get it fully. We're not cooking with gas yet on that one. Capital bylaw, it does look like this is going to be a summer-long effort. I think last week's meeting was good. They've got another meeting for June 13th, but it's kind of seems like they're probably going to have several meetings over the summer working to really look at the bylaw and policy. Planning and land management, there's potential for some kind of bylaw, but that's in the context of an agreement with Newburyport, any kind of surface water protection bylaw. Implement solar, let's see. Comp master plan, that's been on for a while. To me, I see that as plus, not FY25, but and with all the plans we're doing with housing and hazard mitigation and transportation planning and all of that, we're doing different pieces of it. Pipe Safe and Dunn has kind of cried out for a master plan on circulation and parking and land use for a number of years. Wireless communications facilities. I think our bylaw is actually in pretty good shape, but it does need to be updated. We are out of compliance on cannabis. We are required to zone for that, and that's been on the list for a number of years and hasn't really gotten much attention.
That's the planning board initiative?
Yeah, But they haven't, like, we put it on memos we've sent them, and I gather they've kind of scratched their heads as to like, why is that on the list? Well, it's on the list because it's the law. And if someone's gonna do it, it ought to be the planning board.
Is this for sales of it, or growing of it, or what?
Well, I don't, so where West Newbury voted affirmatively when it was decriminalized, we are obligated to accommodate it in our zone. And I haven't dug into the details, so I don't, you might know that, I don't know that. Whether
It's essentially, it's fine, like, we can't deny it because we approved it.
Right, I mean, I think it's something similar to adult entertainment, where if you don't zone for it, if someone was to come in and ask the building inspector, can I put in this use in this location, if we haven't specifically zoned it, you know, so there, I think it's very unlikely, but it is something that's been on
We're a
my
farming
list for
community.
5 years, and
I'm not kidding.
yeah, so it's something that
That'll be looked into for sure.
it should definitely be looked into. Mill Pond Management Plan, a lot of people think that's important. I think it'd be great to fix it. It's just the time it'll take. This goes back a long time. Some town owns land, steady land use disposition, just kind of a macro look at all the town owned parcels. Is there anything we might not need that we could sell for proceeds or put to use for affordable housing or for something else? GIS, you know, we still are working to build more staff capacity for that because there is pretty regularly mapping. I'd like to see that. I either have to go to MVPC or we don't, you know, we don't yet have the capacity in-house to do that. Potential land disposition for housing, and then that more field, that's not, you know, soon. Public services, the fire department operational and asset structure review, including improved daytime coverage and operations. This goes back to my very first meeting with Dwyer in 2018. That's definitely a continuing issue for FY25 as we look at their staffing model. Potentially, we did have a proposal we got a couple of years ago to do like more of a capital asset evaluation, trucks, substation, you know, the garden street, like what do we have, what do we need, bring in an outside consultant to really look at that. We didn't go forward, it wasn't the right time. I think we got that proposal shortly before COVID hit and it just kind of faded away, but at some point we might, you know, want to look back at that. Pickleball courts, cemeteries, and infrastructure. I've got soldiers and sailors under infrastructure. I don't know if that's the right category. Water source, building access, Route 113, bridge, LED streetlights. It's easy to see why something like that just doesn't, you know, it's just in the scheme of everything else. It's not that it's a bad idea, it's just a bandwidth issue. River Road boat launch, that's the Hufnagle property. Complete streets community designation. I do want to make this a priority this year because I don't think it's going to be a huge lift, and getting it done is going to improve our competitiveness for state grants for transportation. But there is some work that's got to be done to get that. Mill Pond All Access Trail. There's actually a working meeting later this month, so I don't really know where that'll go, but I think this board ought to be a key decider on what, you know, because it's easy to see something just starts up and it starts being meetings, it starts being time, and this board, it never said it was a priority. Maybe it is a priority, but we
I was invited to the meeting, so.
okay,
I'll be there.
okay, good, I'll be there too.
What is that?
Late May,
23rd, I don't remember.
yeah.
And that's being held by, who's?
Michelle, well,
Yeah,
Michelle-
Michelle stuck out the invite. I think she's been under some pressure from like Open Space Committee to get it back onto the front burner. So I think it's like chairs of, or it's like more, it's like, it's not a posted meeting, although could morph into that, I suppose. It's like a stakeholder meeting. So, and then I was looking back, I had in my head that there were all these new things came out of town meeting, but really just about everything was something that's an extension of what was already in the list. And that's what most of these are. I will say that, you know, steel landfill with the PFAS class action litigation and some of the ongoing testing, that is something that we, you know, need to make sure is part of our awareness. So yeah, there's a lot to, you know, a lot to process. I'll email this around tomorrow, and I think when, you know, when the time is right, you know, Wendy, you can decide what's a good date. Last year we did prioritization in July. I think we're better organized now. We could do something in June. Whether we want to do it at a regular meeting or a separate meeting, but something to just look at the big picture and make sure that I have clear direction and can then give staff clear direction on where we ought to be putting the most time.
I had one question that goes back to, town-owned land. And it's a question really for Angus. Is there ever a time when owning the land can be part of an incentive to a developer to come in and put housing that we might decide is appropriate for this town in place? In other words, you have 40 Rs, you have zoning stuff, but you don't drive the bus.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have town-owned land, you might be able to drive the bus. You may also be able to do stuff. My thing is one and two bedroom houses, which the market doesn't build. In fact, if you have a 1 and 2 house, it's 2 bedroom house, you should expect someone's gonna buy it and make it a 3 and 4. So I just think of all the people that we'd like to retain in town who would love to move into a 1 or 2 bedroom, and I'm not quite sure. I know the benefits of 40R and some of the other stuff, but I think if we could drive the bus a little bit more on this, I would be grateful.
Yeah, there's definitely something the Affordable Housing Trust, you know, talks about on a regular basis, is whether there's underutilized town lands that could be made available for that purpose.
Cool, great. I'll have to attend one of them meetings. Thank you.
So appreciate your patience. That's a lot of information, but
It's good to lay the groundwork.
yeah, and we put it first on the agenda intentionally, just because we could kind of take a little bit of a breath after town meeting to just say, okay, this is where we are. There were a significant number of those things that are reaching key, like either completion or kind of to where I don't need to worry about it as much in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So I want to make sure we can get some of those over the finish line.
So item B, I think you kind of rolled into what you just described, right?
Yeah.
Follow up from town.
Yep.
So Middle Street Bridge.
So we had the meeting last Wednesday, Rick and I were there, and we briefed the board a little bit, but there's a draft intermunicipal agreement in circulation. There's 2 changes that made sense coming out of that meeting, so we're working to get those built in. One is just to formally append to the draft IMA the cost estimate so that everybody knows what they're agreeing to. And second is to put in language that would be basically an opt-out provision if the actual bid price comes in above what the parties have agreed to. They would have the option at that point to back away, so it's not a blank check. Those seem reasonable. And another major thing that was discussed is it seems like all parties are in agreement with the idea of putting the project out to bid, you know, probably early summer, early to midsummer, so that we get a bid cost and give some more certainty. Normally you wouldn't put project out to bid until you have full appropriation, but obviously it's going to be harder for the council politically to appropriate funds based on an unknown number. So we could accelerate the bid process really as much as, you know, we could push that as quick as we could. We have the bid documents, they've all been reviewed by legal. So there might be a reason to do that, you know, as soon as we can,
Mhm.
even though the work wouldn't start till next spring. But that would. Yeah, so in the meantime, it continues to be a standing item on the council's committee on public works and safety, I think is the name of the committee. And but the council president, Ed Cameron, is the one that the council designated as the council's point person for the intermunicipal agreement.
Okay, page school conditions assessment.
Oh, and then you all know this, but there is now gonna be a meeting on June 11th that Senator Tar and Rep Ramos are gonna be at regarding the bridge.
I thought it was interesting that they copied on Congressman Moulton's office.
Yeah.
And also Mark Egan Warren's office.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interested to see if somebody shows up.
Yeah. Page conditions assessment, we sent that around to basically a working group, including this board. The draft is a public document. If someone requests it, we'll provide it. But the idea is to get kind of that core group of people to provide comments, get those all built in with the consultant, and then have a second draft that would be much more broadly circulated, posted to the web, news and announcements, and to use that as a basis for, major public input. But our feeling is, since it's so lengthy and there's so much to it, if people read a draft and then get another draft 2 months later, they might say, oh, well, I already read it. So we want people to read the one that's the second draft that reflects kind of staff and Pentucket and key board and committee input. So I'm going to be working with Christine to set out a calendar that we can send around to people to basically set a deadline for people to get comments. And I do understand it is a long read, and it's not something you can read once. You're like looking back and forth, and there's so much. Have any of you guys had enough time to even like glance through it?
I looked through it, because I saw they gave the 6 options, which was like pretty brilliant,
Yeah.
and then I was gonna ask you, can I get a printed copy? Because
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
there's a ton there, and it's
Yeah.
gonna take time and
Yeah.
marking up, and
Yeah.
they did a great job.
I think it's a terrific first draft. I think they really have met what we asked them to do, but to get it to where, there's so much there, to process. So yeah, progress is being made, but it's, we gotta be focused on it. We have to really just put a lot of time in it. And Church and Prospects, we had a really good meeting, I think yesterday morning with the Water Commission. Rick and Rob were both there. They will meet again next Wednesday. And at that point, confirm both the amount that they're gonna borrow and whether we're gonna do long-term or short-term borrowing. And there's pros and cons both ways. But Mark's given me a tour of the project recently, and I think we've got a good approach on that one. We have confirmed June 24th will be the date that this board will be asked to approve the sale of either bands or bonds.
When you do that, I was reading the pros and the cons and the timing and all that. You're gonna bond a certain amount, and then there's the ARPA funds.
Mm-hmm.
You worried about if there's contingencies or change orders that would push that number? You could bond the base amount and then let the contingencies run within the ARPA component, not?
The ARPA money has to be under contract this calendar year.
Okay.
So let's say we expect to know really by next Wednesday. For instance, like a big question mark's gonna be, are they gonna hit ledge? And so far, there haven't been issues. And by next Wednesday, we expect they're gonna be done all of their trenching. So if there's gonna be some like big surprise in terms of subsurface conditions, we should know that. And we therefore would feel much more comfortable going to long-term borrowing. Because we're kind of past the biggest of the variables.
So does the base bid have enough contingencies in there to cover certain change orders? So I guess what I'm saying is you could bond the water department's number of it, because any contingencies can be accommodated with the ARPA funding. It might reduce the ARPA funding money needed if there weren't any.
The borrowing amount, the scenarios that have been run that were used in the water budgeting and rate setting process were based on water borrowing the net amount. So they were based on use of the whole 616,000 of ARPA. So if they were borrowing more than that, it's gonna throw off the debt service that they've kind of bargained for.
Right, Chris, it's exactly what Angus just said. You don't wanna think the ARPA money can take the change orders. It's needed on top of what's borrowed to do the contract price.
I'm not arguing that, not looking to touch the ARPA money, I'm just looking at, I'd rather see it get bonded versus going to the bands.
Well, so
We would too, at a staff level, we really would, because the annual borrowing is such a time sink.
That's where this is headed. That's where
think
this is headed.
I do think that's where we're gonna get.
It's just a matter, like Angus said, where they run into something that's whoops, and then you also talked about 50.
Yeah, my recommendation to them is gonna be take the contract amount, add any and all change orders so far, which have been very few, but they decided to add a couple of, what was it, valves? Yeah, so maybe 20 grand, so take the contract amount plus known change orders, and then add 50,000, because let's say if you need the 50, you have it. If you don't need it, because it's 50,000 or less, you can just use it with this board's vote to prepay some of the principal, which is just gonna reduce your debt service. If you end up having borrowed more than 50 above what you need to then go back to town meeting and have them reappropriate it toward a different capital project that has a useful life that's as long as the term of the borrowing. So if you borrow 20 years, it can only be used for something with a useful life of more than 20 years.
So the hope is that if they're past the point where they might run into ledge, that the 50,000 contingency plus already accounting for known change orders, will give plenty of buffers, and the money can just roll back to pay principal.
Now, somewhere in one of the correspondences, because I get so many emails, they can't even keep up with them. It was talking about how fast they're going. And I'd asked at one point, there's 125,000, I believe, in the contract for police details.
Mhm.
And there was some comment about that could get kicked back because they're going faster than anticipated.
Yeah.
Now, I've not read the contract, so that gets prorated. It's an account that gets allocated against. It's not a lump sum. It's a carry and they own it at that.
Let's see, I have the contract open on my desktop, but I can't answer that.
So there could be a credit too on that.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
exactly,
it would seem so, yeah.
Because they're flying on the.
No, this is all really going well, and yeah, right, so on Wednesday, very likely that the answer will come, and it's very likely that it's gonna be not the bands, but the amount that we need.
Yeah, that's my guess as well, yeah.
As best as it can be said right now. Rick, you comfortable with that as a statement?
No, I think that's great. I think that's the way to go. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree that the bands.
But
the
just hope that they don't run into, hope
Right.
that we don't hear tomorrow that they ran into ledge.
We're all gonna be standing out.
Well, and then, this thing with the hydrant location, if they were to change that, that's gonna be.
Yeah, there's gonna be
so,
some money.
Yeah, there's some variables.
Yeah, there's some variables, but not, like Rick says, the big thing is, you'll know this, probably this week. They'll have a sense.
Well, this week only involves tomorrow.
Yeah, right, but aren't they about at
Yeah,
that point?
but, I drove up there yesterday, but yeah, they still.
They're close, it's
They gotta
close.
go up the hill.
We'll know within a week.
And the other thing on the borrowing, we are 100% done with the official statement, which is that long 8-point font thing, and so that's great. The only thing is just plugging in the amount. But that means as soon as we have it, we're ready to go.
By the way, the band is also undesirable because the rates are higher
That's right.
for the short term. That's another reason.
Yeah.
It usually doesn't work that way this year, so, someone were asked, bands is undesirable for that as well.
And you're paying bond council every year.
And then you're doing the whole-
It's just, it's not.
And eating up a ton of your bandwidth.
Yeah.
All right, how about the parade?
So we have the list in there. It's been going great. We had a working meeting, earlier this week. I forget what day, but, Rebecca's done an awesome job. A number of staff are really, it's just a great process this year. Very collaborative. Our veterans agent and Ron Ross, our rep to Eastern Essex, has been very hands-on, really helpful. So yeah, I can't think, who was at that meeting earlier this week. I know you were there. Police, fire, council on aging. It's just a great, it's so nice because my first year, it was really like, people weren't sharing the work. It was great, so it's very nice. It's all like coming together with just a lot of people doing this and that. And so I think it's gonna be another great parade. The thing I want to get out of tonight is just if you can designate what each of your speaking roles are. And
When do you do all?
yeah.
Second.
There's specifically chair things there, so those are the only two I'm doing. I know Chris doesn't want to read the names. Right?
We will make sure whoever's reading the names will have them well ahead of time and can get the
Have a phonetic-
pronunciation.
I could hand them to you today.
What's that?
I could hand them to you today.
Okay. So Flanders Fields intro,
The last year wasn't too tough.
all right, so Chris, Rick will do the We Shall Keep the Faith. Governor's Memorial Day Proclamation. I can do that.
That might be a good one for a student. We could see
Okay.
if there's a Pawtucket student.
Okay. I'll
I
do
feel
it.
like in the past, remember that Project 351?
Yeah.
That's who had done it in the past.
Okay,
I think it'd be better to have someone like that than a board member.
okay. Veteran and Gold Star families, please stand. Where do we need, so Chris,
I guess.
and then list of names of deceased, that would be Rick. Feel free to object. I'm trying to alternate.
No, correct me if I'm wrong, this is different, now it's deceased, it used to be veterans.
No, it's always been the list of decedents in West Newbury, and we highlight if they were a veteran.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then we'll do the
Last year, I can do it again.
Okay,
Won't be the same people.
hopefully not. All right, did you get all those things?
I did, yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to department updates, town clerk, update on the election. Is this a good turnout?
So I looked back, and it was actually the highest turnout since 2020. It's the first competitive election we've had since 2021. So it's overall, it was.
And that was just for Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec and another campaign that came up last minute.
But the mail-in ballots really helped to push the numbers.
Yes, 46% of the election was vote by mail.
Oh, wow.
So total ballots we got in was 262. No. 263 vote by mail ballots total. And it was actually, it was a very smooth day. We have 3 poll pads now, so we were able to check in all the vote by mail at one poll pad, and any residents who were coming in had 2 poll pads to be able to check in. The line was never more than 2-3 people deep, except when the whole yoga club came in at one time and there was 6 people, but that was the longest line we had all day. But it was very smooth. I think we've got a nice rhythm, especially end of night.
Mhm.
And so we did have quite a few write-ins, but we were able to get through those pretty quickly. So.
Good. Anything else in that? No, I know. Okay, Sage Center upcoming activities, those are just listed. So will you do those as department updates instead of announcements now?
I think on this one where we were so tight, I'm trying to keep it at 180. I like putting them under announcements if there's room, but,
Okay. Lots of good stuff going on.
yeah, the yesterday's, concert was so fantastic.
Really?
It was so great. Yeah, and one of the nicest things, it was wonderful in and of itself, but one of the nicest things is it's now very clear that it's taken hold as like so there's a new, music, director at Page School. So she was, leading the choir and, there was violins and some different instruments. And she referred to it as, really happy to be here continuing this tradition.
Mhm.
It was so nice to hear that because she doesn't know that this is really pretty new.
Yeah.
That our Council on Aging's been doing that kind of programming, and now it's really taken hold as something that's now gonna be something people can count on happening. Not just with this one, but the one they do in the fall as well. So, yeah, it's just a terrific, relationship that's, built between the town and, Page. And the food, needless to say, Jen as always did an awesome job, homemade mac and cheese and biscuits and cake and salad, it's great. And we had, police Officer Roy was, there. And, really hands-on, handing out food, it was nice, it was a really nice event.
All right, town manager report, any questions on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Says, on the scenic roads process, memo drafted to remind departments, boards and committees about requirement of scenic roads general bylaw. Is there an issue going on that?
We did have a violation on Coffin
See
Street.
that at 37, are those interrelated?
I actually haven't seen that memo, so I wanna get a copy of that.
I think that's because there was discussion during that planning board meeting that people don't know this, so,
Okay,
yeah.
didn't know what it meant and kind of curious.
It's probably to do with cause it's not a zoning issue, so it doesn't show up on the zoning map. So if someone's going in for a septic permit or something like that, if the Board of Health, and I have no idea what it was, but that happened in Marshfield, when I was the town planner there, is Board of Health had approved the septic permit, they weren't aware of the Scenic Roads Act. Someone disturbed the stone wall to access the site to do the septic work without knowing they were running afoul, so it is important to make sure every department involved with permitting knows to direct people to be aware of those requirements. There was also a little bit of an issue actually with the water, Church and Prospect. There were a couple of trees that had to come down on Church Street. The planning board added those
Short notice.
on the day of. And that was something that really should have been identified at the engineering stage. And it wasn't, so.
Employee benefits fair,
That's another thing that normal towns always do. Up until the last couple of years, we never did it. Now we're doing it every year. Caitlin Gilbert does a terrific job with that. Brings in all the vendors, health insurance, life insurance, retirement, accidental disability, all of it. Chair massages, healthy food. So it was very successful. Yeah, so that was terrific. We are in open enrollment period for employees, so I just wanted to acknowledge that and taking place and.
Yeah, great. Okay, board, commission, committee updates. The first is the River Road Resiliency Planning Project.
So you all were there.
Yep.
And I think Lisa's agenda lays out really clearly what's ahead. There was a meeting of the Climate Change Resiliency Committee last night. And this is basically our marching orders. There's some fine print, unwritten, there's a lot of subtasks within some of these things. For instance, like the idea of pursuing commercial vehicle exclusion on River Road. Butch and I are looking at that. We talked to DOT about that last Monday, and they gave us the guideline So we're looking into that, what will be involved if we want to pursue that. So I think there is gonna be a time in the not too distant future that we're gonna be, working with that committee. And then probably this board on what's the best use of the $40,000. For instance, for the commercial vehicle exclusion, you do need to do a lot of the documentation we could do in-house, but you do need to have 24-hour traffic counts, and you have to identify what proportion of the current vehicles are commercial vehicles, 2.5 tons or more. And so that's something we would have to incur a cost to do that.
Oh, that's something that probably TEC could, or something like that could do it. That shouldn't be a cost, I wouldn't think.
No, I wouldn't think so. And actually, we are having traffic counts next week.
Right, that's what I saw,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for
Changed.
so for the Route 113 process, next Wednesday, they're gonna do full counts at the intersection of Bridge, Church, and Maple. And by full counts, I mean, numbers, turning movements, pedestrians, cyclists, like full. And then in addition, there's gonna be 3 just with the automatic, the thing that keeps, so that's a less detail. It's good on the numbers, but it doesn't get turning movements. So we'll have, those will be over a 2-day period next week. So we'll have the data that they need to, go forward with that. So, yeah, it would be, and MVPC can do it too.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't know if they have time, but they with advanced scheduling.
They use
that.
LTA for that then?
I assume that we need to do that, so.
Just regarding sort of a follow-up to the presentation, or to the event last week. At the table I was at, I think there was this concern at most tables of public safety issues related to River Road, and somebody came up with the idea of perhaps just using simple markers along on the riverside by the field. I actually talked with Butch about that today to see what his thoughts were, and I think that's something that would have a good public safety effect at very low cost, and we might want to think about.
So marking the edge.
Yeah, marking the edge of the pavement with, reflective markers, and, and these aren't long-term permanent fixtures.
Yeah.
But they need to be secure on the ground, but, they don't need to be, set in concrete or anything like that, and.
We use something like that in town already, right?
I think we do, yeah.
Yeah, right, so
Yeah.
we know, yeah.
Right, yeah, no, Butch said he has a vendor that he.
Yes, right,
Bought it from before, and that he's familiar with it, and, I just think but I think that was a solid idea, and, something I wanna consider.
Yeah, the table that I was at, there was an interest in forming a citizens group to pursue some of this, and, it's just kind of, I think, troubling. I think we should have like one group working on it.
Right.
To manage that.
Right, right. Yeah, hopefully those people see the opportunity to sit in CCRC meetings, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the way it should be done. So they're all rowing in the same direction.
We are expecting a draft of the final report any day now. We thought we'd have it by now. So any day we're gonna get that, and as soon as we do, we will send it around.
Okay.
There's a lot of final reports right now.
Yeah.
There's the hazard mitigation plan, there's the page full plan, there's the River Road risk assessment.
Yeah.
Just keep it on.
Route 113.
Right.
Yeah, there's.
All right, the next item is finance policy questions. So this was to just see if we could enlist the finance committee to help pursue some of our objectives in our off season. I think this is something we had discussed before. What I'm thinking primarily is the issue of how much free cash, potentially in the fall that we want to turn back. But there's also the, several policies, financial policies that apparently were passed without Angus's opportunity to contribute to them, so I don't know if that's something that Finance Committee might be interested in taking a first crack at
If
revising.
you're interested, I could provide you guys a briefing on it, and,
Oh, sure, yeah, we'd love to help out on
Are
that.
you planning on meeting regularly, through the summer or no?
We would meet as regularly as we needed in order to accomplish whatever tasks and goals we had.
Okay. So what do the two of you think about enlisting the Finance Committee?
I think it's a great idea.
I was pushing for it last year, was told to hold off, so you know my thoughts on it.
Okay. So Rob, we were thinking maybe you and Angus and I sit
Oh, that'd
down.
be great, yeah,
And-
that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, great, I appreciate that, thank you.
Okay. Action items, reorganization of the select board.
I nominate Wendy to be the chair.
Well, I'll just observe that it's interesting that you've already assigned.
Right.
Numerous tasks to yourself as chair.
It was an assumption, it was an assumption.
I wasn't gonna give her a hard time, I don't think the book.
But I, quite honestly, I find that, I'm fine with Chris's suggestion, but I find that troubling.
What?
That you've already assigned yourself.
That was just an unintentional, not paying attention to the dates. It wasn't the assumption that I'll do it. So, don't find it troubling. There's no ill intent or assumption.
It wouldn't change my motion one iota.
Okay, no, and I'll second it.
And so without discussion, I'm gonna say, I hate to keep saying it, I've only been in town 30 years, I'm gonna say I think Wendy's the best chair and the best volunteer in any committee that I've ever seen, so, there's no person I'd rather have chair in the entire town, so.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, no, I think you've done a super job for the last year. And, you got a lot done. Kept us pretty much headed in the right direction.
Pretty much. So would you be interested in being vice chair, Chris, or do you want to still be the clerk?
Well, see, the best part is the vice chair doesn't have to do much. The clerk has to review all the minutes in advance.
Yeah, I think Chris should be clerk.
So. But by the way, reading this, one of the organizational things, there's only provision for a chair and a clerk. There is no provision to elect a vice chair.
Right.
I think we,
It's a prudent thing to do with this.
yeah, I think that was done in the event that the chair isn't.
So I'll make it real simple, and I make that we make no changes. Wendy's chair, Rick is vice chair, and I'll be the clerk. I think it's going pretty good, unless you want to be the clerk, Rick.
I'll second that. Was there a reason why you preferred Chris as vice chair?
No, I was just asking.
Oh,
because I
okay.
haven't done it.
Oh, okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item B. Special event permit for the garden club. They already have their signs out.
That's what
There's a backstory on the signs.
Yeah.
This is my fault, I'll admit that, they sent me this back in October. And it just disappeared into the ether
Oh, okay.
with the special town meeting coming up, I believe, the next week. It got swept on the rug, and then there was no follow-up from them to me until.
So we saw the flag go up.
No, we got the promotion to send out, hey, we're having the sale. And Rebecca was like, they usually got approved to like for a special event permit, did they? And I said, I don't think they did. I scrambled and I even emailed her saying, hey, you never applied. She said, yes, I did. And she sent me the October email. So, I talked to Chief, I talked to, Paul. Both she's been in contact with them
Mhm.
this whole time. So they both cleared their sections of it. There will be a detail, all in the sale, the bake sale.
So one thing that, is just a little more of the backstory on this, as you know, we have a sign on town property, but there's this odd language that you might not have focused on, but that's been in here, so no instance shall be approved of the following locations, including the training field, unless grandfathered at the time of policy adoption. And this was really one of the weird things for me back in 2018 when I started was, you know, back then they had a lot of unwritten rules, but there was a list that they kept. And that there are minutes, I looked at them earlier this week, from 2017, where the board at that time had basically given their blessing for this event annually in this location with the sign, and I think it was not a unanimous vote because there was one member who felt it shouldn't be given to one if everyone else, but that doesn't mean that's binding on you, but that is why we didn't put, and it didn't say they didn't have to get the permit. And subsequently, in subsequent years, they have come and requested permission, which they did this year.
Yeah.
Just was overlooked, but I guess my point is, they are, you know, back in 2017, the then select board did basically grandfather them or say they could use the training field even though.
I wouldn't be a vote against it, because
I would recommend you don't take these people on.
So I mean, I interpret that they can use the training field, they were grandfathered in that, not that they can put the sign up without any advance notice.
And they know that, but we, on one of the earlier draft agendas for tonight's meeting, we had the sign request, but Rebecca and I felt like it's already up, like we didn't want, so I did want to explain to you what happened, of why it's up before you saw it, but I didn't want to put it on when it's kind of too late.
I'm confused, whereas we have the two applications, the training field and then the building. The training field is from 8:30 to noon, and the building's from 9 to 5.
Because they go into the building after a certain point, they don't use the training field after.
And then police detail's gone now, it's only up for 4 hours.
I believe it's just for when there's actively people on the training field.
The chief is fine with that?
That's what he approved.
Okay.
Because the use of the building doesn't qualify for a detail per se. It's not the safest intersection to cross.
I wouldn't.
No, but what they do in the building is they're bringing stuff out, so it's not like there's a lot of pedestrian traffic going in there.
Fee paid or the fee waived, there's no indication.
We never, well, there's no fee because it was timely. They got it in before.
Even for the building?
Yeah, they sent this application in.
No, I meant the building doesn't require a fee for janitorial.
It's the rule of like a West Newbury resident, it's like fee is waived under facilities.
You say fee waived.
Yes, I don't think I think they didn't want to get ahead of themselves. Assume that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I'll make a motion, we approve both of the special event permits for the garden club as presented.
Sorry.
in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Request to add names to the veterans and homeowners in training field. This is by Ron Ross, the veterans agent. In some of his outreach efforts, he has discovered that there are some veterans in town whose names are not on there. So was Rebecca able to find out what the cost of that might be?
No, she's done some research, but it's, there's different types of monuments and different of them are engravings and, I think what he's talking about are the ones that would be, the advice she was given was someone who does like headstones.
Yeah.
But no, we just got this request on Tuesday, as you know, so it was kind of a late add to the agenda. And I think that, you know, subject to funding, which obviously we'll find, you know, our objective would be to get this done by Veterans Day. And to have that as like and make sure that's done. And then I think bigger picture, there ought to be some kind of like criteria that's just voted, so it doesn't need to come to the board. That like if we become aware of someone whose name ought to be on there, that we can just do that, and then depending on what the cost is, whether we do it once a year or once every 2 years, or I do know the same issue came up in Maine when I was up in my last job, and In that case, the person was traveling a couple of hours, like the particular person who did it, and it was not cheap. And so the council I worked for up there wanted to only do it once they had a critical mass of people. They didn't want to like do it every single time because it just was a cost issue. So I'd like to learn the cost. I definitely want to, we definitely want to do it and we will do it, but.
The town pays for it, not the veterans.
I was just gonna ask if that's a possibility for them to pay for it, or do they not have funding?
I mean, they're just asking for permission, they don't say who's covering that, I didn't know.
Well, it's the town's monument. I mean,
Okay.
it seems like the town ought to pay for it.
Okay.
But yeah, so we'll get a quote and, what I would think we would do is then through Ron, say, hey, we've got someone lined up, they're gonna be coming in on October 1st or whatever. And that way we can use that time if there's other qualified, eligible people to just get as many done. And so we're not doing it piecemeal, ideally.
Yeah.
And then his suggestion on potentially a new memorial on like Operation Iraqi Freedom, that warrants a bigger discussion with the board. So we can invite Ron in for a future meeting.
Sounds good.
Involve obviously the Historic District Commission and Historical
How
Commission.
many names are on there currently?
I don't think I have pictures, I just haven't counted.
Go take a look.
Yeah, I have pictures of all of the monuments,
Yeah, 'cause I'm
but I haven't started.
I'll make a motion, we approve, adding the 2 names to the memorials as specified. But I also want to clarify that it should be done with the same size, same style and detail of the existing. And that there should be a, signed off approval of the spelling of the names before anybody starts.
Yeah.
That's a great,
Second.
Second, yeah.
So you won't need to come back to us then, I guess.
not if it's not just for these two, I think if, there's more, I just think administratively, it'd be better to have a policy, so when these come in, we can just do it instead of bringing it to the board, because it shouldn't be a subjective thing, nor is it.
It'd be pretty easy too, especially with death certificates and things like that. Like, whole names.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Those aren't always.
That is amazing to think back to how many signs
No, but then
you've seen in your life for.
Yeah, I know. My dad, he said he started 3 or 4, he did, he started 2.
Yeah.
And I went and got it corrected, and they sent it to me again, and they corrected one error, but they kept that error. And so you can't rely on the death certificate.
No, but
Yeah.
it does listen to veterans, so at the very least you can get it to
Yeah.
Steve and Steve.
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
All right, item D, request to authorize submittal of an MOD accessibility grant.
I make a motion, we approve the building inspector to submit the grant for the accessible doors.
Sure.
Further discussion?
I think it's great.
It aligns nicely with the, wiring.
Yep. Request for determination of pile equipment as surplus. Does he have, potential people that are interested in purchasing these? Do you know any?
I don't know.
So these just get put up on a marketplace or?
Municipal.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It's where we stole
COA van.
truck, the fire truck, the COA van.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been really nice with, Caitlin and, they've really been like proactively clearing some of these things, on the disposition side and.
Ken says it hadn't been used in so many years,
Yeah.
it's just sitting around.
Yeah, using up space.
Somebody can use the equipment too.
Yeah, well, yeah, and then not only does it use up space, but it probably periodically ends up having to be moved for some reason or other.
Not to mention Rebecca's actually undertook her own project of making sure we're collecting the license plates and canceling those registrations, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of background work that's getting done for those.
Yeah.
Make a motion, we approve, the disposal of the 3 plows as done in the packet.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Request to authorize hiring a DPW highway experienced operator position for the start of FY 25. Any questions on this?
No, I think I wrote yes, I thought it was
Yeah.
great.
Right.
No, I moved on, we approve to authorize the hiring of the new DPW experienced operator position during this fiscal year.
Second.
Right, all in favor?
Get that, I think we actually have, gets posted, but we haven't moved forward with anything, so we'll move forward with, screening. That's great, thank you. That's really gonna be greatly appreciated.
So the next two items we've already discussed, so we are down to endorsement of the draft harbor master. Yeah,
The red lines in here are from the current MOU, so they're all, most of those were the same as what was in when you saw this a couple of months ago. There were a couple of changes that would be, they show up in a different color as, so the main change was to add this language about if someone withdraws, you know, how's that accounted for? And,
We already discussed these.
Yeah.
Okay.
and then this was an important clarification, the vessels located in West Newbury. That's been kind of a sticking point for, there's a particular, resident who docks their boat in Amesbury and has kind of been giving the town a hard time for many years about why they can't get pump out services in Amesbury. They are West Newbury resident. I understand their point,
yeah,
but it's,
so physically located in West Newbury, that means on a dock that is attached to the shoreline? Okay, so is it the center line of the river that is the West Newbury border?
I would assume so.
I mean, I think the main idea was so that the pump-up boat's not going to other
Yeah,
stations.
yeah.
That have their own pump-up boats.
All right, so make sure that's clear.
Make a motion to approve the intermunicipal agreement with Salisbury for the pump out boat services.
Again, any further discussion?
I would just note that, you know, while, Neil Harrington has said it's fine, his board's reviewing too, so there might be changes. If there's changes, we'll bring it back to you. If it does not change from what you see here, once their board acts on it, we'll just bring it back to you for signature.
Wendy, just a quick question, did we ever get a mooring? Map?
We're working on it.
Oh,
We're working with, Tom Goodwin.
that goes to your question, no, the
Yeah,
mooring,
no.
mooring should be defined.
There isn't one.
No, but,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
but if we get there, then you know where the.
Yeah, but that is in the agreement now, is that that's sort of the responsibility of the harbor master. To monitor that at least.
Right, but he can't monitor it if we don't
If
give
he
him a.
doesn't have it.
It needs to be an approved, you know.
Yeah, no, we've met a couple of times with Tom Goodwin as well as his wife has been involved, and they understand our expectation is to have.
Yeah.
Do we take a vote on that?
Yes.
I don't think we did.
You made the motion,
We
second.
made a motion,
All in
second.
favor? Aye. Good. Thanks, Rick. All right, scheduled public information session for the Artichoke Reservoir Pipeline Project.
Can I ask, ARPA, the sills are off? Have a little gender, I think, because you already said,
Yeah,
Jay, we're not doing.
yeah, that got taken out, right? I guess.
Which one? Oh, they are correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just not ready.
Well, no, actually, so I can give so you guys had appropriated up to 50, and I think it was Chris who did that, because we had an amount, and he said, well, why don't we go to a little higher in case, and that turned out to be a great
Wait,
instinct.
50, what are we,
When you, on the ARPA sales,
our page? Okay.
which is, yeah.
Yep.
So the contracted amount plus the estimate that we just got today for just over 5,000 comes to about 51 and change. So, we could approve the additional work largely within the vote you already took. And then cover the extra 1,100 or so out of the operating budget. And so I think we can handle it without having to go through another ARPA filing. You know, if there are more surprises, you know, we could be back, but at this point, based on the memo we got today from, GNAP, they recommended, it was just over, I think it was about $5,400.
That's the biggest surprise. The price was incredibly favorable.
The unit price was much
Yeah.
lower than they had,
When you think, we were out there, we did a site walk, and to see them, you know, they have to use the lift, they get infilled with mortar, bricks, ties, and, well, $600 a pop. That
Yeah.
seems very efficient.
it does, yeah.
Must be a good mason.
I appreciate it being that fair on the price. I mean, that's great.
Oh, and while we're on the topic of the page, looks like the roof replacement for the water building may start tomorrow. It's been under contract for a few weeks, but you'll see that work start very soon. And I talked to Brian today, he said he thinks it's gonna be done in a matter of a couple of work days. So we'll see.
What's the price on that again?
Not cheap.
Brian was surprised at how cheap.
Oh, you mean the bid came in low when we approved?
Yeah.
We approved, it was a fairly large number, I can't remember.
So honestly, it was like at 60.
I was thinking
That
80s.
was like what you approved, yeah.
It was
Yeah.
lower.
Yeah, I'll
I think the low came in.
I'll send that around.
Yeah, Brian, no interest in getting
All right, Artichoke Reservoir, what we discussed is, sharing what we know at the next select board meeting, which is on May 23rd. We'll invite you to report, but even if they don't come, we can, share documents that are publicly available. Anything else you want to say on that?
May 23rd meeting?
Yeah.
What time?
7.
I'm just asking because it's public, I mean, I know other people might be interested.
Will it be 7 or can I start at 6:30?
Well, we can do other business before.
Yeah,
Just.
okay, yeah.
Library board trustees. Appointment.
Yeah, we could maybe do that at 6:30.
The plan was for 7, I think, right?
Oh, okay, we could do 7:15 for this. Gotta be a joint meeting with the library board.
So you can tell Fred has been modified. Is it 45?
There's been a lot of back and forth on this issue all day.
He wanted MGL cited to why the whole board had to show up, or the majority of the library had to show up, because.
All right, well, so do you think there's gonna be a lot of discussion on this
I
thing?
don't think that would be any
It's one candidate.
One candidate, and she serves on the friend of the library.
You just would per terms that it make a good deal of that kind of meeting, so. But that's what the law says.
All right,
Because they have to vote as well.
It's as you know, it's a joint appointment, right, they're an elected,
Right.
yeah, it's the same as it's always been.
Literally for the exact same seat when I first got here.
so I think we can still have the public hearing at 7 and just do this at 5 or 7, right? It's not gonna take that long.
Yeah.
All right,
What if we had a couple more people resign, maybe fewer people would have to show up?
all right,
I'm not even up to speed and I'm not saying anything.
all right, we have minutes to approve. All right,
And I have no modification because on all 4 of these, I've already sent my changes into Max. So
Okay.
I'm not just sitting here silent, but I've already done it.
all right, so on March 25th, under A, the resident's name was Chuck Wegg, right?
Wegerson, I put that in there, but he didn't want to put his name for some reason. He had somebody else's name in there. I said it was Chuck Wegerson. He said, that's what he came back with. You
Chuck didn't want to put his name in?
No, Max didn't. He didn't seem to think I had it right. So it was Chuck.
Yeah,
I have no
so is
problem.
it, I think it's appropriate to have it in.
Yeah.
That's-
It's
It's 12 Bailey's Lane.
underneath his address, just as a name.
Well, technically, name and address for the record.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Item B, Rick, just jump in if there's anything.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Item D, there's an equal sign, in the second sentence.
You know how to make that noise.
What?
An equal sign.
Pretty good math problem, but I don't understand that one.
Okay, the next, I have a question under action items. Item I. It's Newbury Riding and Driving Club is stating that they would, manage the road crossings, and I thought that was a requirement that the police department had to manage road crossing. Especially on the state highway.
I believe, I don't quite remember, but my guess is it would be, they suggested that they could do road, like, because Deb always says, oh, we just handle the road crossings.
I think Whitney's right.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm sure that that's what was said, that's accurate in the minutes, but I think we should discourage that, especially on 113.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always been.
I'll follow up and I'll look at the minute with the meeting myself, but I think that's probably what he got as a reference,
Mhm.
not whether or not that's what's happening.
Okay, so you follow up on it? Okay.
I think it'd be interesting to talk with, Chief Dwyer, and just get his perspective on it, you know.
I remember him saying before that he didn't even want dispatch managing traffic, he wanted police officers to be doing it. That's my recollection, but, we should watch it.
Well, the motion states approval of the police chief too, so.
Right, well, yeah, and so if that's true, then it would just be good to hear his perspective on it.
That whole presentation is kind of sloppy on that permit, that's why the motion was a little more specific.
Article 43. I don't think it's accurate to say that the expenses for additional unbudgeted costs were for department training, or is it?
Sorry.
I think, yeah, it was said in part to,
It was more people were out for long-term.
well, but also for officers that are attending academy and those shifts still needing to be filled while they're in academy.
Mhm.
That was said.
Okay,
So I'm sure that's what he meant, but maybe we could add that detail.
What letter?
We're on,
what is it? Article
bottom of
53.
page 3 of the
March
March 25th.
Got it.
Mhm. Right, anything else on that?
I didn't have any.
Okay, so.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of March 25th as modified.
Okay. Right, and we'll go to March 27th. Is it true that the unemployment insurance is $1,200?
The budget amount?
Yeah,
That sounds familiar.
okay, that just really struck me, it's not very much money at all.
No,
We almost never get a claim.
claim, right?
Yeah, year after year, when I started, I think they were carrying $5,000 a year, and I look back, they never touched it.
Never touched it.
We every now and then.
It's one of those things that if it comes up, we're gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah,
through some
yeah.
other mechanism. Yeah, I mean, through like the FinCom amount or something.
Yeah.
Any changes?
No.
All right.
No amendments. Make a motion to approve the minutes of March 27th as presented.
Second.
All in favor? On April 11th. What?
April 1st.
The shortest one ever, April 1st.
I had no changes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of April 1st as submitted.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, on the next one, item B, C. About halfway down, popular is not the right word, I would say controversial articles, or there's a better word. It's,
Contested article.
I think controversial is okay, but popular is just not the right, I would say unpopular.
Paragraph somewhere. Max does use some colorful wording that gets corrected ahead of time, so that one stuck through.
All right, the next item for me is D, item C. At the end of that sentence, I'm just not clear on what it says, was addressing the fact that the department is shorthanded and consideration of daytime staffing. So I don't know if it's just a verb missing there, or,
So I said D.
yeah, DC.
by board of engineers.
I think it was supposed to say something like, and in consideration of the need for daytime staffing.
Yeah, the need for, yeah.
And in consideration.
Of the need. Yeah. And then this is a general question for you, Angus. There's a mention of the insurance related to stipends, that requirement.
Mm.
If we have found subsequent to a meeting that that is not true, do we go back and adjust this, or do we just leave it as, because that was?
I'm just gonna offer a suggestion. I don't know if there's the right answer, but I think that I wouldn't see anything wrong with adding a note, like a footnote to say the minutes are accurate as to what was stated. It was subsequently confirmed that.
I think that's.
Just to have a clear record, but without changing the, so which section?
So this is, E.
Got it, okay.
Okay, yeah, so there's a long sentence in the middle, and then capital, we both felt that, so you could just put a footnote right after that.
Yeah, we got that clarification from Tim just in the run up to town meeting.
Yeah.
And what was the clarification? Just
That-
remind me.
He
Basic-
disagreed with our prior legal counsel's opinion.
Yeah, well, basically, he said that, the law is employees, but what constitutes an employee, the chief elected board has something to say about that, and the select board would be within its authority to adopt a policy
That defines
that
it.
defines it.
Right.
But he did go on to say in that opinion that it would be debatable whether that policy, whether the water commission would be subject to that policy.
Well, there's that, all of that, but the rest of the town government would have to abide by that policy, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Water board's a little bit different because it's
arguably.
arguable, yeah, a little bit different.
Okay, so you see where to add the.
Clear as mud.
Could you add a footnote to the end of that paragraph, just saying that subsequently determined that.
Yeah, which,
It's at, E, joint session, item I.
And you know, it might be good, I wouldn't swear to it, but I'm pretty sure that what I said was citing Larry Murphy's
Yeah.
opinion,
Mhm.
cause I remember feeling not 100, so I was saying, this is what's on file, this is the opinion, and we have relied on that opinion over the years, but since we hadn't checked it with council, I didn't wanna, that wasn't my opinion, I was kind of saying Larry's opinion that we'd had on file from like 2010.
Mhm. And then item 4 on that same page. 4 lines down. It says her presently protected areas, but I don't think that's accurate. And they're just talking about wetland areas.
in 4,
Yeah, 4, the 4th line. Make it sound like, yeah, right,
I think
right.
it was supposed to be in the presently
Yeah.
protected areas.
Yeah, not hers.
Right.
We're not even gonna touch that.
Yeah. That. So then I also had a question on the last general discussion. It says not on the agenda. And then we discussed the transfer of the 200,000. Is that okay?
was there any action taken?
Yeah, we made a motion, so.
Why was it not on the agenda? I thought it was.
Yeah, I thought it was 2. And I also just think the verbiage to perform, your motion wasn't to perform the transfer, I think it was to
Two transfer.
put it on the warrant,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
For the voters to approve the transfer. We can look at that.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay.
Very good.
Yep.
Yep.
make a motion to approve the minutes of April 11th as amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Officially caught up.
Well,
Dylan uses thanks.
That's okay. That's great. Wow, great work.
All right, next item. Town meeting follow-up. What went well, lessons learned. It was way too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know what the solution is. None of those articles could have been, should have been eliminated, so if we would just plan on 2 nights.
Yeah. My thought is to start with the special, get to that the first night, and then hold the annual maybe 2 nights later. Because to do it 2 nights in a row, people, you know, made it very clear they don't want to do that. I think Saturdays are dangerous because everybody got something going on. I think it's a clean break between the two, and nothing gets funded on the first one until the second one gets completed. So you're almost requiring at least a quorum to come back.
Right. Well, we've been able to match forums in the past. I mean, you just gotta get on the phone to get people in.
Yeah.
you can't have 2 separate meetings.
You can,
And
yeah.
then have annual, and both can function separate from each other's, and one closes out. And if you approve the mail, what happens, and that closes up, so you don't have to worry about having a second night, as it were.
I wonder, so, I mean, it seems clear like we're moving away from the, one town meeting a year and, not having special town meeting. That was a discussion. I wonder if we can just
I
plan.
don't understand that.
I don't know, Archie was always like, didn't want to bring anything up at a special town meeting. It was only supposed to be for emergency things, so not counting on.
Yeah, right. Not treating
Now
them.
it's more in the workflow to
Yeah.
target the fall town meeting.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I personally think it's ridiculous to not have a fall town meeting.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, all your financial decisions, you have to have this incredible foresight of what's gonna happen for the next 12 months.
Yeah.
Right, but what Wendy's talking about a little bit is that there was always a burden to the annual to take anything that was really important to the annual, as opposed to treating them both equally important. And you could almost imagine the year being split in 2 you always overloaded the annual because you didn't want to take up certain things in the fall because you thought it just wasn't appropriate. It's a year-round business, you know what I mean?
So I wonder
Like you were saying.
if maybe we just, kind of front load the fall town meeting. A lot of it, could the capital projects be primarily in the fall? I mean, I know the bylaw says dates.
No, I think the capital planning process really aligns, like I think, actually, I have a different point on that, if I could. Because I think that, I had floated something a couple of months ago that I never had time to really research, but I had heard a rumor that Newbury and, maybe Merrimack, that when they have a number of spending articles like we did, I heard a rumor that in the structure of their warrant, that rather than having all separate articles, that they have an article with like a bunch of line items, similar to a line item budget. I never had time to I did pull a couple of warrants, I didn't find what I was looking for, and then I just.
But we discussed that here.
Yeah, so I think that's something that as we're looking ahead to this summer and working with capital committee, because if you took there might have been 18 articles that were capital. If that instead was one article presented, this is the capital budget with these line items, and the same thing, people can put a hold. That might be a way to get the same amount of business done in much less time.
That wasn't what delayed the town meeting. Those things went.
No, I know, but if there's things like that could be, that could help condense it, and.
What was the aggregate total of the number of articles? It was
53 articles.
53.
Right.
So maybe,
That related.
was that, it strikes me that was anomalous.
I think it was.
But I feel like it's gonna become the norm.
It wasn't
well,
the number of
we'll
the
see.
articles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
No.
yeah, I think we are way, we have a data point of 1 right now,
Right.
that doesn't.
No, time out. Before we discussed any business, it was 45 minutes.
Yeah.
If you're gonna start a meeting at 7 o'clock, start it at 7. If you're
Right.
not in your seat, I don't care.
Right.
And then the instructions took 20 minutes.
Yes.
That doesn't need to happen. So you burn 45 minutes. Then when you want to flip the articles to the front, we burn another 20 minutes. This procedural stuff is eating up the time. It's not the articles. people clippity-clop right through them. You had 2 articles where people wanted to talk. The next issue was, instead of holding to 2 minutes, I was timing every one of them. They were going on 5 minutes, 7 minutes, they were
Yeah.
coming back. There were 2 people stood at the microphone and debated for quite a long time. So it's a lot of issues that don't need to happen.
Right,
It's
so
not the articles themselves that are slowing the meeting down.
there's several different things that could be looked at. For instance, going back to Wendy's point, having to have all the zoning and bylaw stuff happen in the spring isn't necessarily the best way to have those things done. I like Angus's idea of one article that goes to stabilization, capital stabilization. So much simpler to talk about.
Yeah.
Then you don't really have to talk about individual items quite as much. I agree with Chris, that went quickly, but there's several different things that would be helpful here, not just one thing. So
But when you're spending $540,000 on a fire truck, I think that merits a separate reading and a slight explanation.
you can put a hold on it, Chris.
No.
It's the same thing. It's just,
I think there's a danger that even those going as fast as they did kind of concerns me still.
Yeah.
Those weren't the issues that consumed the time in the town meeting.
right. And what consumed the time was a lot of stuff that we are forced by habit and history to present at an annual. And why not take up some of these things that are a little more complex, a little more, get the people, wanting to talk about into the fall. I mean, I don't.
We did
see
do
why
that last year. We brought a lot into the fall. If we said, let's take them in the fall deliberately, knowing we knew this was gonna be busy. Again, another silly thing. How about a couple of wireless mics? That's gonna save time.
Well,
And again,
people
it's just
advisory committee
inefficiencies.
can do that.
Well,
for you, right?
the wireless mics are a problem. Brian and I had this discussion. We did have wireless mics. When you have that many cell phones in the room at one time, though, it interrupts wireless signals for things like that. So we thought, instead of testing it out when a whole bunch of people showed up, we'd rather have wired mics.
Right,
So we need more mics.
we've been in other meetings,
Right.
the one in Newburyport for Whittier, they had a wireless mic and 2 guys were, and it was very crisp.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that, just because you had a problem with wireless mics
Well,
and
we
cell phones
never
before,
used that system wired.
Yeah.
Like, that was the first time we used that system.
Yeah, okay, but I don't think that there's a broad statement that can be made that wireless mics are gonna always have a problem with cell phones, because it's, my guess is that there are wireless mics that will not have a problem with cell phones.
And we could own our own set of
Right.
mics that you get comfortable with. You guys already mentioned cable advisor, there's certain funds that are available to the use of the town, so I wouldn't rely on anybody else's. I'd go with Rick's idea, find the one that works, just like these things work so well for you.
We could ask cable advisory to help us out with that. I mean, I think that. And they should be portable, whether they go here, they go to Page, or they should transmit wherever you go. Yeah. Whatever
We
they,
use.
How do you feel in general about having used Page though? I mean, I thought it was a good, venue.
we almost exceeded capacity, that's the problem, I think.
Well,
I'd like to look at the middle high school. I think
Yes.
that's better. I think it was a matter of just building Casey's level of comfort with that. Cause I think that would have been better. I thought it worked pretty well.
It worked
Laid
well,
out well.
But I agree-
The physical
I
space.
agree with you about the school
AV
has to
would
be
be a lot
best.
better.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, any other thoughts?
I think Brian or whoever set up should be commended.
Mm.
I thought, and I thought that was, and I loved, so,
Paul Savigny also gave us a couple hours as well.
yeah, right, I'm sure there were, that's type of people you have working here, but I like the format of having FinCom be able to see Casey. So I like where it was for us. I also really like, this is gonna strike as odd, calling out the non-voters and giving them a section where they all seem pretty content. Cause it always bothered me at town meeting that, it's like, sit down front, except that, well, over there, it's down front, but it's only for it wasn't as clear, and it always bothered me, so I like that. And then as to the mics go, I'm presuming we'll be back in the annex for fall. If we are in the annex for fall, I'd like to see the speaker microphone in the center, not off to the side, because, I remember Richard Baker having to do an entire loop to get to where he was gonna do his assessor thing, meanwhile being abused by Casey for Casey. I thought there was a lot of positives. I thought whoever set it up was smart about, that's what I wanted to just.
Well, I want to say thanks to Brian too, because the meeting has started and there's still people flowing in. He's out in the back hauling in more chairs and panic and putting them out. He did a great job to take care of that in a short notice. So they did a great job with the physical setup. Never mind.
I think so. I think Jim probably had something to do with that too, so. I guess.
Anybody who was involved with it deserves our
Yeah,
thanks.
exactly.
He did a good job.
Yeah, one thing I did hear from several people, just anecdotally, they suggested if there was ever going to be a long meeting again, if we ever did have to do a long meeting, maybe we do look at a Saturday. And make it an event rather than just town meeting, so you have like Garden Club does like a big sale or something like that to get people to go, maybe serve lunch.
There are places that do weekends.
My impression is that, and not me, but most families with young kids, they're going to sports and activities on weekends and it's so busy, you're gonna lose the core component that you wanna have started getting engaged in your town government.
That was the other idea, is that maybe you do like a field day on the field.
It's tough. In Westford, we did that. It was Saturday was always when they did it. And you had those issues. There's always a trade-off, but yeah, on balance, I prefer the weeknight for those reasons. That's tough for some people too, but yeah, in Westford, they offered lunch, they took a break, people would go, you know, that obviously costs money. Some towns provide childcare, but you're talking Cory checks, you're talking a huge, you know, those are big towns with a lot of capability to put together. I mean, we could do it, but it's a lot of time to coordinate
But
that.
even with the number of articles, I mean, maybe start at 6:30, right? You pick up a half hour.
Yeah,
And by the way, we're starting at 6:30, it's not gonna be 7 or 7, you know, if you eliminate that component, if you eliminate the component of people speaking too long in Christmas, we easily could have been out of there by 10 o'clock.
Yeah, there were a bunch of things that all added together. You know,
Right.
I mean, you know, I don't know how to say it, but, you know, there was a lot of time wasted in how the meeting was run.
Right.
And I think that was, I wouldn't be surprised if you put it all together, that we lost an hour. Maybe even more than an hour
We did.
to that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is don't fault the warrant or the voters. Right.
Although, look for improvements every place. There's ways
It was long, but it could have been.
ways to manage the warrant too, I think.
Anyways.
I guess anything else you noticed?
I think this follows on what Rick just said, but some of the procedural direction came off as, I think, was it necessary? You know, it did it. And, you know,
It actually really irritated some people.
of course it did.
Yeah, it really irritated some people.
I think
And it may have alienated some people from
Probably
attending future
Yeah,
town meetings.
yeah, so I think that does warrant a discussion, just on those substance and style.
I was wondering if it's part of the finance committee handbook, whether we can get a page in front on some of the procedures.
Yeah, process and procedure, I think.
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
just, you know, to maybe shorten the presentation.
Yeah, it's such a negative way to start, you know, you're just putting people in a bad mood, like right out of the gate.
Right.
It's actually, I will say, and I've said this to many people since town meeting. I was so impressed by just the people, because I think, you know, going into the meeting, we knew there was some discontent on different issues at the meeting, and then it started the way it started. You know, it really could have gotten ugly, and it didn't, and that's to the credit of the people who showed up and voted, because everybody was very, you know, courteous, and, you know, there was no there was no meanness, there was no like nastiness. And I've been in a lot of town meetings, and sometimes, you know, it can really go south, and, I think that's much more to do with the voters than you know, how the meeting was run. In fact, I think how the meeting started off, I was sitting there thinking like, oh my God, this is really gonna get ugly. And I was very, very delighted and impressed that, I think.
I also liked that when we moved the 2 articles up that people wanted to get to, so a lot of them could actually go home, how many people stuck.
Yeah, right, over 200 people went
Which
through.
leads me to believe that quorums may not be the issue that we have to bear. That's all.
Well, every meeting's gonna be different. You know, every meeting is gonna be different and,
Yeah.
you know, so,
Well, let's make
Because
it
it-
better, if it's gonna be different.
right, yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah, let's try to create.
We'll go the
keep that
other way.
trend going.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't think we're gonna have, 53 or whatever that number was, articles in the year.
So maybe we could have, sometime in the next couple of months, have the moderator in, and we can have some constructive dialogue when we're not up
Yes.
against the,
Right.
timeline of a town meeting, but when it's more relaxed and maybe,
Right.
see if we can get some changes.
Okay. Next item, Church and Bridge Street, traffic speeds, truck traffic. So this has been an ongoing issue on Bridge Street with those big trucks that are going across the river to Kimball Farm, but it's been exacerbated by pipeline project because they can't use Church Street now, so all the trucks are going down Bridge Street. So Angus had pulled out some traffic studies that Wayne had done.
Yeah, basically, Wendy brought this to my attention and, I thought that, we knew we weren't gonna have a lot of time going into the night to do anything new on it, but I thought it'd be helpful, especially where this goes back prior to, some turnover on the board, just to kind of make sure everyone's aware what did get looked at, how, where it went and how it ended. So, to change speed limits on a local road does require DOT approval. There's certain documentation they look for. And that's, what I put in here. And we were fortunate to have, someone on staff who was able to do these kind of traffic counts and for DOT to accept these because of Wayne's credentials as a traffic engineer. So we were able to do this in-house. Wouldn't be a huge deal to have MVPC or someone do it, but it made it a little easier. So we were able to really do it in-house. But you can see the amount of, so he was out there counting cars with a police officer with the, radar gun. So it's like, it was a significant investment of time that went into this to try to meet DOT's requirements. And basically, it came up to nothing, because if they see that the 80th percentile vehicle or 85th percentile is going a certain speed, their takeaway is that they must feel safe going at that speed, and therefore that's the appropriate speed. And we did the same level of effort for Chase Street right around the same time. And in that case, we were seeking a reduction in posted speed. They came back with a recommendation that we increase the posted speed because the actual 85th percentile was at a higher speed. So my main point is that, and I think it's just that the state does not make it easy to make these changes. It doesn't mean we can't try again, but when,
It's idiotic, because just because that's the speed, no, I mean that genuinely, you can put that in the minutes. Just because people drive that fast doesn't mean it's safe. It's a false presumption to think that that is the case. Because, and the other thing I looked in the studies, it didn't have it 2:20 to 2:30 in the afternoon. On the high school kids, they're driving down there 52 miles an hour. So you wanna say it's a safe speed, it's not, because when I'm out there walking and they're flying by, I turn on my camera, because I know when I get killed, somebody's gonna have a laugh at the video. But it's insane that they say whatever the people are comfortable driving is the safe speed, it's not. And particularly with bikers and walkers and people with dogs and children, I can't say that it's moronic, it's idiotic, that's how you do it.
That also presumes that the only criteria for speed limit is what cars are doing, as opposed to what you just said, which is, how about traffic calming, how about they overbuilt the width of the road so that they could speed more? How does Newburyport get down to 25 miles an hour?
they're thickly settled.
Every place.
Yeah.
Except where otherwise posted, it says.
Right, and there's a state definition of.
No, I got it.
Yeah.
No, I would say you go back to them, I don't know how you get them to say, wait a minute, this is not logical.
Yeah.
And what can we do to reconsider? Other than that, for real heavy police presence and you're doing 41 miles an hour, you get a ticket. I mean, which is also.
Well, there has been, I mean, this, particular Bridge Street resident has, been concerned about this for a while. I mean, there's a couple trucks, these are dump trucks that are flying back and forth. Convoys of up to 6 at once. Last week I counted 12 different trucks making 2 passes per hour from 7:30 until 3:30. That's nearly 200 large trucks passing in a single day.
What are they
So
doing at Campbell Farm with all these trucks?
it looks like they're hauling fill.
So who?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Another FDR. Yeah. So.
No, I'm going to get into.
So in response to that, Chief Dwyer has talked to him about, one of them has a J brake and it just makes a really loud noise.
Yeah.
But we don't have, inspectors that are licensed to test that. Or ticket based on it, but has been a police presence
Well, you
on
can
it.
take it based on speed.
Right.
I mean,
So,
other thing the residents could do is start driving real slowly down the road.
yeah.
Nobody drives it down.
No, I mean, slow the trucks down, you can see them coming up the street, that's an option for a citizen to. I just find it offensive that the DOT says, as
If that's
crazy
how
as
fast
people want.
drive, then that's what,
Yeah,
I mean, good thing the study doesn't have it during when the kids are getting out of school, because they come down Church Street, they're flying.
So, by the same token, then if the average driver is going 77 miles an hour on 495, why isn't the speed 495, 75 or 80 miles an hour?
It's
Next time I-
exactly logic they have here.
Bring out that logic.
and I was just guessing, but probably because there's some federal. Right, although you see sometimes things posted 70, so yeah, never mind.
Other states,
Yeah, in Maine.
yeah, right.
So was there anything about weight limits on the bridge, that ever got discussed?
Oh, it's been discussed at length.
Yeah, right, and so the result there is the state just won't back down from.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of correspondence with the city, with this board, with DOT. And now they're absolutely have shut that down.
Wait,
The idea of, weight limit.
So before they reworked the bridge, we went through this whole process of getting the bridge repaired and rehabbed. And, and then they let us know after that process that the weight limit would be going up, which hadn't been part of our thinking at all.
That was, if I remember right, that may have been, a result of federal requirements because the money was ultimately federal money.
No.
I thought they had to meet a certain standard,
The mass set the weight limit.
So how does the town gain some control over the speed limits on our own roads? That's the question that needs to get answered.
That would be a question to Senator Tar and Rep. Ramos, in my opinion, because the law is really clear. And DOT, and this is it's the same kind of thing on the commercial vehicle exclusion of River Road. He sent me the guide. And, there's a lot of specific, you have to have an engineering study, like we're gonna have to make a significant investment just to make that request in a way that they'll take seriously. And that's all driven by state, I don't know if it's state statute or if it's policy, but it's how it is. And so,
Well, you have to find out where it started,
yeah.
whether it was legislation, policy, or funding, or whatever, if it's even still valid.
Mhm.
And then how do you change it? I mean, what would happen if the town went out and put up signs that said 35 miles an hour tomorrow? What happens?
They probably wouldn't notice for a long, they might not ever notice.
But can we do that? Is there any repercussions? What happens?
I don't know.
That is a good point.
Let's give it a try.
If there are no repercussions, maybe we'll just do it.
Well, somebody that got pulled over for exceeding it could fight it.
Oh, that's for
Yeah, that's
sure.
probably-
What are they gonna fight? Did you change the speed limit?
Yeah, that is not an enforceable speed limit.
Why?
Well,
I mean,
well,
that's the
if
whole,
anybody-
you gotta think the whole argument out.
If anybody happened to be watching this meeting, they would keep an eye out now for speed limit signs are different.
All right, so any action items out of this or further? I guess let's just get that.
I guess, what would be good is I can take the guide, that they sent me just last week, on the commercial vehicle.
Mhm.
I only looked at that section, but it's 160 pages. I think it probably covers this too. It was updated in 2022, so it's very recent. I'll send that around, you guys can peruse it, and if that's something you wanna talk about at a future meeting, we can definitely do that. As to whether we wanna either go back at Church Bridge or Chase or something else. I guess my only caution is no going in, that it's a significant investment of time and resources to pursue this. And we made that investment in good faith on Bridge, Church and Chase Street, it came up empty, so before we just, go down that road, so to speak, I just wanna make sure we have eyes wide open.
Well, yeah, I like the approach of talking to your legislators too, and seeing, I mean, there are exemptions, are there exceptions, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this densely settled is definitely,
Church,
yeah,
Bridge, are both,
it's based on my recollection, it's been a number of years since, a few years, but they look at the number of driveways per mile, that kind of thing, like, it's very, like.
let's put in more driveways.
There's like metrics that you have to.
It's not arguable, it's.
Yeah,
fact-
it's objective,
It's fact-
objective, yeah.
But is our appeal process to the driveway count? I mean, all I'm saying is there's always other options.
Mhm.
Maybe this.
Yeah, so I'll send around the guide, it's the, I think it's the Massachusetts version of the MUTCD, the manual uniform traffic control device. And I know, because I remember when I opened it, I said, oh, it's from 2022, okay, yeah, Jim's, you've got the statute there for particularly settled, and where that definition looks like comes from legislation. So we'll circulate some reference materials, and if there's a street or streets that you want the town to, go at, we can do that.
Again, in reality, drivers are driving excessively faster now than before COVID. I mean, the other one is, Bachelor Street is brutal. So I don't know, there's so many streets you could do with it. I was thinking on the Church and the Bridge, what about, do we have this trailer with the speed limit thing acquired yet?
I don't
think it's been delivered yet.
I don't think
I
it's.
was gonna say, that'd be a pretty good place to deploy it
Mhm.
right away.
Oh, one thing I noticed, you guys, I'm sure all know this, driving through Merrimack, the center of town over there, you know how they have something, it's this weird sign up in a tree with a light? It tells you your speed, you know what I'm talking about?
Well, it's not.
When you're coming down the hill from Amesbury.
Yeah,
to-
towards the
Yeah,
river.
yeah, it's like up on the right, and it's very, do you know what I'm talking about?
It
Rob?
flashes at you.
Yeah, it flashes at you, but it's not like some big thing, it's a little sign.
got a few,
like
there's
posted
actually-
on a tree, it's weird, but as a driver, it gets my attention.
Yeah.
So I meant to mention that to Dwyer to say, can we get a couple of those, like including on Ash Street with the unpaved portion and, because it's a lot less, it's not this big bulky thing that's gotta be moved around.
But
It's
those
very-
truck drivers, once they're in they ain't gonna see the sign every time, they're not gonna pay attention, it's gonna be the casual driver who doesn't realize they're going the speed that they are.
I mean, just, obviously, there's, limited, people power available, but, maybe we just need a more aggressive, enforcement for some period of time.
Give me a radar gun and a notepad, all right, take it.
All right, here it is. I just Googled MAMUTCD. And here it is this is the document that he sent me last week. 65 pages, not 165, but this, I'll send around this link. The section I looked at starts on this it's page 16 is when it gets into the commercial vehicle. Exclusions. Yeah, here it is. To restrict heavy commercial vehicles, request must be filed, one or more of the following criteria. And then, decision to exclude shall be based on engineering study shall be submitted by municipality and shall include the following data. So it's not rocket science, it's not something we can't do, it's not an hour of work,
But that's a different, excluding the heavy vehicle.
Yeah.
Speed limit, two different issues.
No, of course it is, but I suspect this is gonna probably deal with that too.
No, it
So I'll
probably
send
does,
this
I'm just
around.
saying, don't confuse those two issues.
Oh, yeah, no, I know that, yeah, So, yeah, I'll send that around and we can all read it and, see if there's opportunities that we're not, aware of.
Okay, correspondence, Whittier Regional, the whole thing seems to be fizzling out.
Yeah. They're making it too much of a process, right? They want 3 subcommittees and they can't even figure out when to get together for meetings. They wanted to schedule every Wednesday for the next few months or something?
No, they sent out, the doodle poll they sent offered Wednesdays, basically probably 2 to 3 Wednesdays a month between, basically now and early September. But that was just polling for like getting people's availability. So I had checked with Chris to make sure that the dates I was offering as available were dates that, were both available. That didn't suggest they were gonna meet all those. That was just to try to pin down people's, but all they sent was Wednesday afternoons.
Yeah.
So if like, that's not a good time for someone.
Yeah.
And, and I think it's telling that it came from the mayor, who's in the entire city of Amesbury, probably the one with the least amount of time to be coordinating schedules. So it does, I feel like there's gotta be, people involved who aren't like the chief elected official, who's got the least amount of time,
Well, that's pretty much-
looking at, whether, nothing personal, whether it's her or Mayor Reardon or me or my counterparts, like, we're the last people you want leading this, because we're running a town, like, we got every day we're busy.
Yeah.
So,
That's the way it seemed to go at one point. They wanted to cut out the second tier, and that would be me, like, they wanted you and the mayors, and they were trying to eliminate and that's fine,
but that's not gonna go anywhere, because I can't, at the end of the day, it's,
they really ought to pick like two cities and 2 towns, do a working group, revise the document, and then start working on it and carving it up from there.
I think that makes more sense. This is just becoming a bureaucratic.
Yeah.
Very much so.
And they're not adhering to open meeting law.
Yeah.
And so that's gonna get even worse, is once they're actually posting agendas, keeping minutes, having to vote minutes, like, it's. Exactly, no, it's just, and that's why, right from the day that Mayor Reardon started talking about task force, I'm like, it was kind of predictable, it was gonna go this way, so. I think, Chris, if what Chris said reflects the board's, I think that's a very constructive suggestion, to say, hey, it seems like it's turned into a bureaucratic thing, how about 2 cities, 2 towns, lock them in a room for 12 hours, see what they come out with. Is that something we wanna offer as a different
Then how would you
model?
pick the towns?
Well, it's gonna be Newburyport and Haverhill.
Yeah,
It's just gotta be,
Mhm.
right?
For the city.
or Amesbury and Haverhill, because there's not quite the same bad blood there.
Well, maybe, but Rid was the big driver of it, so. Maybe,
Yeah, but,
maybe 3 cities and 2 towns, I don't know.
yeah. But, and I think Mayor Gove, I think her education is in education, I think she's like a legit background.
I really, no.
I could be wrong.
Again, I guess it wouldn't matter. It should be a draft document that then everybody can use to mark up, to start getting on the same page.
Yeah,
Maybe don't predetermine the towns, but Haverhill's gotta be in play on that.
of course, yeah.
So 2 cities, 2 towns.
Nothing's gonna happen. Cause they're just gonna say no.
Well, but at the end of the day, something will happen because we already said, without a new regional agreement, we're not looking to fund any new building projects. So when they get desperate enough, when the roof's caving in and the kids are dying from everything falling on them, they're gonna need to do the regional agreement.
Well, what I meant in the sense of they're not approved from the
No,
beginning.
don't put that in the minutes.
No, I mean, really, what's the end game? That's what you always have to think of. What's Haverhill's end game?
Well, Neil Harrington made the point at the meeting you and I were at in Amesbury, that depending on what goes on with this Northern Essex collaboration, what he said, speaking, from Salisbury, he said if the price point gets down to a manageable level, that he thinks his town isn't gonna be as concerned about the apportionment if it's an overall amount that they can live with.
And I would advocate strongly against that because of the reason the agreement is so grotesquely flawed. And this is your only chance to fix it. It's the only chance you're ever gonna have. I've been waiting for this for 20 years. Because it's always been one vote can can. We kept saying, some point, someday, they're gonna need to do something. And this is the chance. You let this one go, you're never gonna get back.
So whether it's two cities, two towns, whether it's Haverhill, Amesbury, you all in agreement that the best path forward is a small group of people working together to put something for the broader group to look at.
Yeah, not multiple committees.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Multiple
always,
committees just delete
that's
it.
always the way things work
Yeah.
forward. The truth is, it's like, you know, watching Rick and Chip work on sustainability. You know, I know you have a group you work with, but you know, it came out of a smaller germ of an idea. And you grew it. So I would pursue it that.
All right, municipal energy aggregation update.
You saw the correspondence, we did get confirmation, that, once, the consultants, once Colonial's, legal has provided their review, we will have the opportunity to see the plan before it's submitted to DPU. Elisa had asked that question, and I got a hold of Colonial yesterday, and they got right back to me and said, yes, of course, they'll send it to us, so.
Yeah, so fortunately, there have been some pretty significant changes at DPU. Yeah, and, you know, I think, that, you know, the changes in people, you know, the people who were the biggest problems, I think, were, will go away. And replaced with people who had a much different perspective. And they were given a mandate to make this work.
All right, anything else?
Motion adjourned.
Second.